welcome to the transparency. This is the second interview between Idaho State Police and Jennifer Drake. This will happen 10 days later after the first interview, which was March 16th, 2020. This would then take place March 26th, 2020. And it would be at the request of Miss Jennifer Drake. Again, welcome to the transparency. You guys needed to hear the interviews because then tonight I'm going to break down both interviews, give you guys some recap, give you guys some truth bombs. We're going to talk about it all, but you need to understand and you need to hear it for yourself first. Again, welcome to the transparency. This is Jennifer Drake's second police ISP interview, March 26, 2020, 10 days later from the first interview. Can you hear me? How about that?
One of them that just keeps, I'm hesitating to say things just because in case people are innocent, but if they're on my brain, I feel like I need to say it just in case. Something that keeps plaguing me is that I know you guys, I'm assuming you've talked to Elora Gatchel already. And I love that woman. I know she loves us dearly. We met her brother who was in from Hawaii and met him as the last person who saw him. And ever since they came, I think it was the day or the day after that I talked to you guys.
Is it Eldora or
yes,
Eldora?
Eldora, Eldora, and I think you guys have already talked to her. She was that last patient.
We haven't talked to her, but other detectives in our office have talked to her.
Okay. So the thing that and I don't know, this text that, well, first about him. She's married. No, so Eldora's husband.
Okay.
We have known them for a long time, but I don't remember ever meeting him. We've been to their house, and she's been to ours. She's been to several of our children's performances. She drives down for it. And I remember at one point, Brian has talked about her husband, but he has mentioned that they don't have a really close marriage. It's a little bit estranged or a little bit odd. And every time we see them,
Have you ever seen her husband?
Not that I can remember. Like, I have racked my brain because I've been to their house. I remember everything we looked at and we did, and we were with her, and I cannot in my brain form what he looked like.
How long have you known her?
Probably 6 years.
And how did you meet her?
Through him being a patient. She was a patient, and she had invited us up several times, and then Brian had told her, I think the very first time we met, she came down to one of our children's performances, because our children do a lot of acting and stuff. And they had a bond through faith, because they have a lot of those conversations.
Brian and Eldora.
And Eldora. And I've never thought it odd, because I feel like I have a good discernment of people. She's always been very, very kind. At one point, she really reached out because she really wanted to hang out some more as a girlfriend, and I just couldn't. At the time, I kind of let that go. She lives in Sandpoint, and she had wanted to kind of get girlfriends together, and because she's farther and I do have a lot of girlfriends, it was hard for me to make that happen.
Yeah.
And so I've never mistrusted her, but the more I keep thinking is the fact that the husband has never been around. And I know how much she loved my husband. It seemed, even as I talked to him, it was always very platonic. There was never, and they would go months without seeing, to where it would be months before she'd come into the office. It would be when she would have problems, But if they had marital problems, and it was constantly a thing that she looked up to my husband so much, I never know those discussions that happened behind the door, and whether or not her husband just got tired of maybe hearing about Brian. I don't know, but it's one that I know that she's known for a long time. They've been, that I am aware of, there's been nothing, even when I see her, it's not like she's gushy over him. She's just been very thankful for him. And I have never seen anything even close to inappropriate. But the fact that every time I see them and every time Brian kind of talks about, I just remember in my brain thinking their marriage is not very good, but they're fine. Like, I don't know if it's because he just didn't have a faith that she did. I don't remember the marital problems.
Did they have children?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you remember her husband's name?
No. Like, I can't even remember what he looks like. But I know she's married. And if you find out that I'm totally wrong, like, I feel like I am in la la land that I can't remember details of things I should know. But I keep going back to her husband. I woke up even this morning just thinking, why is it that I've never met him? I don't know anything about him. I remember hearing that they aren't very close. It's a very detached marriage. And I keep going back to this text that this Kitman guy across the way kept saying, I know it sounds crazy, but he's a very charismatic, good-looking man. Maybe it was a woman who, made moves on him and he denied her. And I just keep thinking, what if it's, I know even in Austin how many times Brian, he sees a lot of women up there. And the first thing my sister-in-law said to me when she came here for the funeral was that somebody over there said, well, I know a lot of Amish, especially Mennonites, they have a very strong current of jealousy as husbands. And you really should look into the fact that a lot of these women come to see Brian and they talk to Brian about everything. I mean, he'll come home and I have a lady cry on my table every day. I mean, she has so many women crying to him. And what if it's one of these husbands that just, they come home and they talk all about Brian and
That's definitely one of the major angles that we're looking at, and that we have followed up on many different things. And there's a few conversations I'll ask you later about a couple specific people that we followed up on in that regard. But that's definitely our prime suspicion is that there was some jealous husband that did this. No, so going back to Eldora
Yeah.
and her brother,
Yeah.
are you confident that that person was her brother? Did they look like brother and sister?
Yeah, kind of. They both look very Hawaiian, dark.
Did anybody, a couple people that I should back up because we haven't talked for a while.
Yeah.
We have conducted as an office somewhere between, and I can't put a figure on it, but probably around 75 interviews at this point. We talked to patients, we talked to friends, we talked to family, we talked to people in the community, we've canvassed bars and restaurants and the gym and people that work out at the gym, and so we have a much better picture of his life and his past, and I have a list of questions to talk to you about specific things that I think maybe when you're in here the first time that you were maybe still in, probably still are, but really closer to the event and still is sort of in shock and, unsure about the whole thing, and with your mother and with, his brother. And so maybe there were some things that you didn't want to talk about so much. So, but I'm hoping we can get into some of that, just because at this point we don't have a suspect, we don't have a motive, we don't know why this happened. We're still flailing around in the dark. So there's so many different avenues that we're following up on, that I'm just hoping that some of this might help. But regarding Eldora and her brother, I will tell you this. Her brother, it's curious to me, she filmed that video of him playing the ukulele and then gave you a copy or gave somebody a copy of it.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that he fits the physical description of the person that the eyewitness saw running away or walking quickly away from the building after the shooting. He couldn't pick him out of the lineup, but he says that could be him. So he doesn't have any criminal history. We've reached out to Hawaii. There's nothing in-house, no problems there.
This is huge. I have to stop it because I want everyone to hear Van Leuven just said that the eyewitness description is identical to the brother of Eldora Gatchell, not of that of Dr. Moore, seen running.
Imagine what the motive would be, but he was there in close proximity within minutes of when the shooting occurred, and he does match the description.
Have you confirmed that he's having kidney failure and is on dialysis?
No, we're this week we're going to turn and see if we can get him back in. We may have to go. I don't know if he's even still here, but we'll find him and interview him again. Go down that road and just see what the deal is.
Because she was telling me that he was on dialysis even the day of the funeral, because they were going to come and then ended up not coming. And so that's why even when Bubba texted me, because he's on, he's like, have you thought about, because I saw the video, and because my sister-in-law got a hold of the video and sent it around, and so he was thinking of that same thing, and I'm like, he's on dialysis, the man can hardly, he's walking so slow. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, he was wearing black, he was wearing baby, weird things have happened, I guess, but I didn't get that spirit at all.
You said they weren't at the funeral?
No. Unless they showed up, and I haven't looked through the list.
So one of your family members told us that they were, and that the niece was actually filming and had filmed some of the family members at the funeral. Do you recall that?
They said that Eldora and then that they were at the funeral? Or they didn't come up and say?
Not only that, they said that her expression of grief seemed over the top to them.
Oh, I didn't know they were there.
What is the niece's name?
My niece? Oh, her niece.
Her niece, yeah.
I never met her before. She was just kind of there. I could tell you what she looked like.
At your house?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But even his name, I had to say it like 5 times because it's Kekoa, Kekoa, and I could not remember her name because they were just weird names. Yeah, I didn't know they were there.
And you don't know her niece?
No, I don't.
How old is she, do you know?
I'd say she's probably younger than me. I'd maybe say 39, 38.
You know if she's married?
I know nothing about her.
Do you know where she's from?
I don't. I just assumed she came over with her brother from Hawaii, but that's all a good question. There were just so many people in the room when they came over to the house. It was kind of took me off guard to begin with. And then as he started playing the ukulele and the whole family came in, and it was emotional because she said, I have something to show you. And I looked at her, I was like, how in the world have you been seeing him for 6 years? And how did you know to videotape him right now? And did you see the videotape? I'm talking like straight up on him, which to me was a gift because I was like, wow, like this is my husband right here in front of me. And it was very emotional for me. And, I keep going back to the fact that this is his brother, her brother, who's on dialysis. Maybe he's looking at the end of his life. And maybe that's why she's videotaping him while they're sitting there waiting. And so I always try to think the best of people, especially because she's never given me a reason ever to question her. But the other thing along that line is, and I know you guys have thought this, I'm just speaking out loud over the fact that this has to be somebody who is cased to this joint. Like, is there no cameras that has looked at every single Thursday for how many Thursdays? Because they had to have known his schedule. They had to have known that he stays this late. They had to have known that, it means they had to have walked past that window multiple times, or thinking to see him, or
there's no video that covers that building or that side of the street. The only video that we have is north and south. So there's no.
So when we were looking around, it showed the one that, the coffee shop, and it was the drive-through, and there's one right underneath.
Those don't record.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Neither or in the gun store.
Yeah, none of those cameras don't record.
None in the gun store?
There's cameras, they're just for show.
Oh, for the love.
None of this is true. None of this, based on my investigation, is true. The police, ISP, Gary Tolson, and Mike Van Leuven are telling Jennifer Drake that the coffee shop cameras that Butch owns are just for show.
Yeah. So again, this comes back to.
Unbelievable. So there's no surveillance that's showing anything.
The best we've got are vehicles and some people on the street walking, and we've tracked down all those people and interviewed them. There was a couple that were walking their dog. There was another guy that was the first person that Water Spray suspected. Those people have all been interviewed. They all heard the shot. They just didn't see anything. We have one witness that was across the street that was like from here to the front door that heard the shot, looks over there, sees a guy coming around the back of the building. He's walked back in the back of the building before, and he knows that section between the fence and the back of the building is sort of odd. I mean, it's sort of grown up, and yes, there's a path there, but it's not commonly used.
Yeah.
So when he sees the guy coming out of there, he's like, that's weird. And he says, hey, was that you? And the guy turns and looks back and then quickly walks up away from him. He goes and jumps in his car, grabs his dog, is trying to track the guy down, and doesn't see him again.
So this is not the man from the apartment across the way.
Yeah, the man from the apartment across the street.
Across the street.
That's the witness.
And he actually says something.
He yells across the street when he sees the guy walking out of there. He says, hey, was that you? The guy turns and looks, and then and he describes Keikoa. He describes dark clothing. He even describes that silver vest kind of thing, which he was wearing. He describes the heavy features, but he can't pick him out of a lineup. So for us, it's the best he can do is point us in the right direction. We don't have any motive why Keikoa would do this.
Yeah.
So that's something we're going to look into. And it's interesting that several different friends and family have mentioned to us that they thought the video one person said the video made the hair on the back of her neck stand up when she watched it. She thought it was odd. But anyway, but we'll follow up with that.
Okay.
What else?
I think this is a dead end, but I just thought I should say something to you. Okay. Because I take this lightly because I don't want to send you on a rabbit trail. But I completely forgot about this, and the only reason I'm thinking of it now is because this happened today. Is 3 years ago, so when we moved here 8 years ago, we moved into a rental. There was a man who was doing all the home improvements. We got to know him very well, got to know our family very well because he was always hired from the rental agency company, the person who owned the house at the time we were renting. And we were always kind. He's by himself. Come in, feel free to come eat. You know, he's tall. He always wears his Confederate hat. If you live around here, you know Klaus Haas because his name's Klaus, Klaus, Haas, Hawes.
Haws. Is this the guy you rented the house from that had the multiple bedrooms on both sides?
No,
split up.
that's Josh Whitaker. That would be the other one I was going to tell you about. This guy, and I'm sure that this guy is nothing but he's a little crazy.
See the guy that drives around and waves at everybody?
Probably.
Confederate thing inside his car?
Yes. He does have, well, he has Confederate bumper stickers all over. He doesn't have a flag. Wears a Confederate outfit everywhere he goes. He's probably 75. We became very close to them. We tried to, always, yes, you're welcome. You're here to do the fence. Come in and have dinner. He started hiring my son. And this was, 3 years ago, he came in to ask me to look at his computer because he was struggling and he couldn't get his email figured out or whatever. And I said, just bring it in and I'll figure it out. I'll fix it. And while he was standing there, Brian had taken him downstairs. And while they were downstairs, I started bringing stuff up and I saw young boy porn. I saw child porn on his computer. And inside, like my sons worked for him. At the time, they were 13 and 14. And of course, he had become very close with us. I immediately, when Brian came upstairs, I looked at him and I just whispered, I said, I need him gone now. You have to get rid of him now. So as soon as he did, and he's a big talker, he's very hard to get rid of. He is half crazy. But once he left, I told Brian everything that had happened. And he went to Brian, to Klaus's house and said, I stood on his porch and said, I need you to know we love you as a family, but I need you to know this is what we found. And as a family, you may never see my children again. Do not call me. Do not call my wife. Do not go by the house. And at that time, we were in the middle of moving. So we moved probably even within the week, month. I don't know exactly the date of when he addressed him.
So you were in a house that you were renting from him?
From his friends. And he was like the caretaker.
What is the address of that house?
It was 9500 T Rose Trail. It's been sold now to, it has completely different owners now.
Where was that? In Post
It was
Falls?
in Post Falls, yeah.
And what year did
No, I'm sorry, not T Rose Trail. That's a different one. Marina Court Drive. Marina Court. I apologize.
9500 Marina Court
Marina
Drive.
Court, yes. It is Marina Court, but now I'm trying to remember if it was 9500.
5520.
5520.
Marina Court.
How do you know that? That's what it is. 5520 Marina Court. East Marina Court. Yes. Yes. So he stood on his porch, and he lived in Post Falls. Told him, he was really upset. He's like, that was not me. It's a friend who was using my laptop, and when I got back, I couldn't get it off of there, but it was all my friend. Please don't blame me for this. And again, Brian was very loving, and he just said, this is where this relationship cuts off. Do not reach us. Now, we moved shortly after. That's been 3 years. I have never talked or heard from him until he showed up at my house today. Which is a bummer because he found out about Brian's death found out where we lived,
How did you find that out?
showed up today. I think he found out because Tom, the person who used to own the house, didn't know about all this. And ended up, he lives in California, and I think he ended up telling him. That's my guess. I haven't talked to Tom to find out. But he goes, well, I've known where you, because I said something, he asked to see the kids, and the kids don't know why. They just know that Klaus went dark. Like, what happened to Klaus? And so, we just purposely broke that tie. And I'm assuming that's how he found out. But mind you, it's been 3 years. He hasn't known where we're at. He has not tried to call, text, nothing. He's really tall. He knows, everybody knows who he is, and yet he kind of has no friends. So I think that this is absolutely nothing and nobody. Be prepared if you end up talking to him, you will have him for hours, just so you're aware. So I don't think it's anything, but when he showed up today, I just thought, oh, for the love. This was another person who just was not happy with Brian. But we ended on halfway good terms, which is weird. Josh Whitaker was that.
Hang on. So he brought the computer over for Brian to help him?
For me. He
For
kept
you.
saying he was struggling. He couldn't get these emails out. And I said, well, bring your laptop over. I'll fix it. I'll fix your Gmail. I'll get you set up. And so when he brought it over, they went downstairs, and I was trying to fix his computer, and I went onto the internet, and that's what I saw. It's all this boy, child, teenage porn. Underage boy porn. And immediately realized my children will never see him again.
So he showed up today. Did
Yeah.
he come in the house? What happened?
He came, so I was sitting in the car. My girlfriend had just shown up and had some stuff for me, so I sat in the car. A car came up that I did not recognize, and all of a sudden he walked out. And I just thought, oh, what do I do? But my brother-in-law, Johnny, was at the door. He wasn't going to let him in until my son showed up at the door. I was like, oh my goodness, Klaus, and gave him a big hug, had him come in. Apparently, Johnny said he started crying. I can't believe Brian is dead. I just heard about this. I walk in, he hands me $1,000 check. I'm like, no. He's like, nope, I've got lots where it comes from. And of course, I can see too, I'm not going to take his money. But it was odd because I could tell he was very awkward. He didn't know how to, it's been 3 years. Brian's gone. Here's a check. And then he literally sat at my table and started talking, and we couldn't get rid of him for at least an hour.
Klaus, Klaus, Haws, Haws.
Yeah, he lives in Post Falls, and you'll find he owns a bunch of rentals. He's been here for years. And I'm sure probably completely harmless.
So you're bringing him up because he is different.
It's very different, and because we just ended kind of on a, but that was 3 years ago, so.
He's never sent you emails. He's never thrown a rock through the window.
Never called.
Never called.
Once Brian told him nothing, he has never tried. Now, he's always had our phone number and our text, but he has never tried to reach us. And he's never known our address. So I know he didn't know how to, At this time, anybody here?
No, that's fine.
Yeah. And my mother actually is the one who brought up Josh Whitaker this week. And that was on my brain. Again, I don't know that it leads anywhere, but
Josh Whitaker? Okay. Tell us about Josh Whitaker.
So he was the one that when we were trying to move from Marina Court, we needed while we were looking to buy a house, we really wanted to sell this house. We needed like a summer, something just for the interim. We found this place. This guy had investors. He owned this place that he was trying to turn into a nursing home or an elderly home. Needed to rent it just for the summer, and we needed something just for the summer. So we had gone and met him. We found it on Craigslist. My sister and I went and met with him. Immediately, he was like, "This is great. This worked perfect. Pay this much, and we'll be there, through August or however long." So we needed something. So in the meantime, we live downstairs in this 9-bedroom kind of horseshoe house, and his office is upstairs. You go upstairs, and it's like this kind of entity of its own, has its own kitchen, room, office, bedroom, bathroom, everything that he would rent out as well, but we didn't need it, so he continued to use it as his office.
Did he have a separate entrance?
He did have separate entrance outside, but there was also an entrance inside. So you had both. Everything was good for a couple months till we started getting the mail and noticing that he was getting a lot of past due bills. We would put under the door a lot of past due bills. And so after probably 2 to 3 months, we didn't stay there too long. I don't think we were there any longer than 6 months. I have to look back and look at my bills, but he started, when we signed a contract, we signed it for a certain amount, and he realized, let me think how this went. So bills started coming in. I don't remember why. Oh, because I remember he flunked he was trying to become the manager or owner of this caretaking place. And at some point,
Was there anybody else staying there?
no, just us.
Okay.
Yeah, just us 6. I remember at some point him wanting to, things were going bad for him. He started saying, "I want you to start paying some of these bills."
What?
Coming up on some of the piping underneath, because this place had a ton of problems, and he had tried to renovate a lot of it. And we had warned him, said, "There's something's happening. We don't use this bathroom, but just so you know, I think there's something in the basement or in the whatever." Didn't answer, didn't do anything about it. Long story short, in the end, we had put down our deposit, and he replied back and said, "You don't get any of it. I'm not giving it back to you." And we were like, we even had the neighbor come over before we moved out. The day we went to move out, we had him look through the whole thing just to be a witness. We took pictures. They got tons of pictures to make sure that there was pictures of everything that was done immaculate. Everything was in working order. Everything was great. And so when he would not give us our deposit back, we actually went to get a lawyer. And we said, you owed us like $2,800. And the lawyer sent the initial letter, and he replied back, "I have all the documentation." And that was when Brian and I sat down, and I know this may sound weird, but we really did pray about it. We were like, is this worth it? Is this worth going into?
Who was the lawyer?
It was one of his patients, Dan and Stacy Rodriguez.
Dan Rodriguez.
Dan, I think it's Dan. Is it Dan? See it there,
I'm sorry.
right.
Hello?
Oh, for crying out loud.
Van Leuven is the most unprofessional detective I've ever seen in doing all the years that I've done this.
I think it's Dan. Dan trying to make sure her name is Stacy. I'm getting
He's a-
these patients
He's a
all the time.
prosecutor in Sandpoint.
Yes.
Yeah, we know Dan.
Okay, so he's the one who did the first letter. We went out to lunch with them.
And so was Gary Tolson. Gary Tolson just took a phone call in the middle of the interview, just up and walks out.
And they're fellow Christians, and we were just said, is this really worth pursuing? Do we let this go? Do we really go to court over this? And we did, we let it go. We ended up just not replying. I kept everything in a little envelope just because it's really hard for me, because this man who did so right by him, and he just totally screwed us over.
So you didn't win a court judgment where he had to pay you like $5,000 or $6,000?
Okay. No, we got nothing.
We've heard this story, but it had a different ending. That's why we asked.
By who?
The ending, I don't even recall. One of your friends or one of your family members on one of the sides said that, hey, there could be this guy because I think they sued him and they won like a big judgment against him and he might have something against him.
We never took it.
Okay.
We let him totally go. But there were words. I mean, Brian definitely, he had words over the phone, and we emailed. It's funny, I brought those back up. But I still have the manila envelope that has everything in it, where we literally just didn't reply, because he had his lawyer send a letter,
Okay.
and we just stopped it.
Okay.
But no, we did not get anything.
Okay. What else?
I think that is pretty much all. I just wanted to make sure that
So why would you bring this man up? Why?
My
why are
mom
we
brought
talking
it up.
about it? Your mom brought it up?
yeah, she's like, did you ever, I didn't even think about it. And my mom was like, you need to talk to him about.
But there's no
so-and-so."
threats exchanged.
And when we left, after that last letter that we never replied to, and we dropped it with Dan, we said to Dan, we're just gonna drop it. We never had contact again.
Do you remember the address of the house? About how old about was Josh Whitaker?
I'd say probably 34, 35
Today or then?
then. And he had just gotten divorced. He was dating a girl. He had gone through a horrible divorce. He was a mess. He was not so mess.
This was before you moved into Salmonberry?
Yes.
And when did you move into Salmonberry?
December of 2000. We've been in there 2 years as of December. So 2018. Yeah.
What did it look like?
Dark hair. Average, shorter than Brian. I guess nothing particular about him. He had straight hair.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Wish I could help you better with that.
Okay.
If I could find the email. Why not?
Okay, so again, I'm gonna ask some questions and go into some areas that you may feel uncomfortable about. There are things that have come up in the investigation that we think there may be a motive there that we need to look at.
Okay.
So, alcohol issues with Brian.
Yes.
It's been brought up that maybe he was attending AA meetings. Do you know about that?
So when he started drinking with his back, about August.
Mhm.
Remember when I told you how he started drinking?
Yeah, and I wanted to see if I can kind of nail down that timeline a little bit too. When did he have the back surgery? Do you remember?
I think it was August 22nd. I can always text you those definites because I have them written down at home. So today I was dealing with half of his medical bills from that, so.
Did he work right after the back surgery?
No, probably he got hurt and they gave him injections and he could work for maybe another week or so, and then they moved his back surgery all the way up because it was so bad. So I don't.
Did one of his doctors say that he had to dry out before they would go into surgery?
No.
Had to lay off the alcohol for a while before they do the surgery?
No, that he had to get off of the ibuprofen before they go to surgery. He was bleeding internally.
Okay.
Because he was in so much pain, he had been taking ibuprofen for like a year, if not longer.
Brian would text people in August and tell them that he had the shakes and he had to stop drinking. So whatever this is about this ibuprofen, Brian straight up has text messages to people saying that he has to get clean with the drinking.
So they were saying you have to get off the ibuprofen. We will not do surgery.
Okay, so what the accident that sort of maybe was we heard that the back problems had been going on for a long time, that he had back issues for a while.
He had back issues. This pain started about 2 years before his actual surgery, but it didn't stop him from anything. Like
Is that when the paddleboard accident happened?
No, the paddleboard happened like a month before his surgery.
Not really
That was,
exacerbated.
it was like June or July.
Okay.
And that was the point where it all fell apart. And he was using even more ibuprofen. It's when he was drinking more. Then of course they had given him pain meds. So I was like, you have to go, even if it's going to AA. We had a counselor in Texas who was so good, and he used to tell Brian, you should go to AA for no reason other than because he just had a very addictive personality. He's like, you should go to AA for no reason other than to see what it is, and if you don't get your stuff in gear, this is what you could end up to be like. So at that point, I said, Brian, even if you just got into AA once a week, get in and get some accountability. He was only in town once a week. I didn't care who saw him. He didn't care who saw him.
So did he go to your knowledge, he went to AA meetings in Bonner's Ferry?
No, he went in Hayden on Wednesdays. No, I take that back. It wasn't Hayden because I kept asking, why don't you go in Hayden? It was because they didn't meet on Wednesdays. And I would sit there and watch him. I know he went to them. It was in Coeur d'Alene. It was Coeur d'Alene chapter. It had anywhere from 40 to 50. Sometimes it was like a bigger chapter.
Where did they meet?
And they met, it was like on 4th Street. I could probably even scroll through his texts. That would be months, but I remember him sending me the address of what it was, and I would see that he went. And then he would tell me, and he'd be there. He'd stay there for an hour or so, and he did that almost every Wednesday for a while.
Was this the one off of Best Avenue next to what used to be Lyle's fabric store? Back behind where all those little food trucks are?
I think so. I haven't been there, but Best Avenue sounds right.
It's the Appleway turns into Best once you cross 4th Street going east.
I think that's it. So he went for a while until, not for too long, I would say maybe 1 to 2 months, and then he had his surgery. And once he had his surgery, he was completely off the alcohol, but that's when I realized how bad it was because he was shaking, because he was off of that, he was on meds. And even he said, I just didn't realize how bad he was drinking in order to get through that pain.
Right.
And now Bubba tells me, he and I had this conversation this last week, and he's like, he was drinking a lot more than you know, because he said that we went on this New York trip. I was with Brian 24/7, and I looked at him and I was like, that is not true.
Yeah.
I was with him the whole time. I was a huge talker. He's like, I'm telling you, he was swinging while he turned around. I'm like, hard time believing that.
You're his wife. I mean, you probably knew him better than anybody else. You spent the most time with him. I get that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of his friends and family who all said that he
drank
constantly.
Yeah, but all his friends and family. So his family,
Yeah.
he hasn't spoken to for almost 8 years. So the fact that they sat in here and talked with you really blows my mind
Well-
because they know so little about him.
Both sides, your family and his family.
Well, Matt and Emily do know that.
So,
I'd say Matt and Emily know that.
so just looking at some of the conversations he's had with some of his friends and putting things together, it seems like he is sort of, just to get so he's normal, he's consuming alcohol like vodka in the mornings to stop the shakes, and then kind of maintaining just a low level so he can just kind of get through the day.
How would I not know that?
I don't know.
Like, that doesn't make sense to me because when he's home, he's home. Like, he's literally present in front of us. He's not in his room. He doesn't have a
Listen.
secret.
Listen, I don't care if the man drinks. That's not our concern. Our
I know.
concern is to focus on who might have had a motive for murdering him. So, do you know one of his friends said that his routine up in Bonner's Ferry, that he told him what he did was that after he saw patients, he would eat a small amount of food, and then he would go to the gym and work out, and then after the gym he would eat a bigger meal,
Yes.
and then sometimes he would go to a bar and have a drink before coming back to the office and going to bed.
Okay, so that I didn't know. So everything you said just now is true, and that he would eat a little.
Mhm.
He would go work out.
Yeah.
He never worked out on a full stomach. Then he would eat some more,
Mhm.
and then usually he would vacuum and do all his stuff, and then he'd go to bed. And I would see it on Life 60. Like, he's been doing this for years. I would see if he had left. And again, every time I would call him, we would talk before bed. Every time he was gone. I mean, rarely did we ever fail. So it's not like his phone wasn't with him. Like, I would get it if he had left his 360 there to try to hide that from me.
Mhm.
If I never would try to call him and he wouldn't answer.
Was there a particular restaurant that he would go to? We know he went to Yoder's Market, and we know he went to Two-Tone, and we
Yeah.
know he went to the delis at the grocery store.
That part of the interview is so important. So important that I'm going to rewind it back, and I want you guys to hear this part again.
The bigger meal,
Yes.
and then sometimes he would go to a bar and have a drink before coming back to the office and going to bed.
Okay, so that I didn't know. Okay. So everything you said just now is true, and that he would eat a little.
Jennifer Drake is going to admit right here that she was tracking her man through the Life 360 application, which she was, except for the fact that Brian knew how to disable his locations with that, as well as just would leave that phone at the office.
Would go work out because he never worked out on a full stomach. Then he would eat some more, and then usually he would vacuum and do all his stuff, and then he'd go to bed. And I would see it on Life 60. Like, he's been doing this for years. I would see if he had left. And again, every time I would call him, we would talk before bed. Every time he was gone. I mean, rarely did we ever fail. So it's not like his phone wasn't with him. Like, I would get it if he had left his 360 there to try to hide that from me.
Mhm.
But I never would try to call him and he wouldn't answer.
Was there a particular restaurant that he would go to?
You never called him in the middle of the night. You never called him after a certain point in time. The phone records show that was not something that you guys would do. There was no phone calls going back and forth between you and Brian. You guys would talk actually way earlier. So the phone records and the texting shows and proves this. Brian also had a regular personal phone and then a work cell phone. And then they allege that Brian had another phone in his vehicle, a third phone.
We know he went to Yoder's Market, and we know he went to Two-Tone, and we know he went to the delis at the grocery stores.
Yeah, and he took me once to, what's that one across the street? It's a restaurant, but they didn't seem to know him, like even when we went.
Two-Tones?
Is that the one? It has the outside patio or the outside underneath all the trees.
It's kind of like a red house. It's kind of down the road from his office, south on the other side of the road, about a block.
Yeah, 2 tons.
Yeah.
Okay, so he would, but not very often that I know of, because even when we went, they didn't really seem to know him.
How many times would you go eat with him there?
Oh, not very often. Once every 6 months.
Okay.
Like, I'd be up there maybe once every 4 months. Sometimes the kids would come up, we'd spend a day while they saw patients, and we'd go hiking and then hang with them afterwards.
Okay, so the surgery was when?
I think it was August 22nd. And then he was out for, it was like 7 weeks.
No working for 7 weeks?
No working. He was on his back. That's what I mean by he was in the house that entire time, and I was able to see everything he drank. And he was on pain meds, and I'm really sensitive to that. I would be like, if you're on pain meds, we don't even drink wine, period.
We were told that he didn't really do very well on the pain meds, that he didn't like the way that he felt when he was on them, and it really made him, knocked him out. He was trying to not take those and look for alternatives to pain meds. Is that your experience?
That's true, with his back pain especially, because they would really make him really drowsy in the evenings. Like, I had no problem getting him off the pain meds.
Okay.
Like, if I would just say, are you able to cope without him? I just felt like it was another vice that I wanted to make sure we didn't have to tackle.
So back to work sometime in October?
Yep. See them on their calendar.
And then when did he injure his leg?
So Brian's, I was trying to see if I have him here, actually, the exact dates for you guys. I don't. January, February. Gosh, I just looked at all these dates this morning, you guys. Because I'm doing all these medical bills that apparently in the state of Idaho are now all my responsibility. February, I want to say February 10th. It was a Tuesday though, right? Maybe 11th?
February 10th, I believe, was the day that he got the surgery on his leg, ankle.
Okay, so then it must have been, it was either a Tuesday or Thursday, so maybe the 4th?
So several days passed between the injury and the surgery?
Yes, we went straight in the next day into the daycare, the day surgery or whatever, and they couldn't get him in because we really wanted to try to get him on Friday, and they couldn't, so they made us wait until Monday. So he literally had to lay there with his leg up on a pillow. And again, this is why I am struggling to figure this out, because out of both of these injuries, he was home so much, not even being able to move. And there was no alcohol, and he wasn't like freaking out. So for them to all sit there and say that he was so bad on alcohol,
They didn't say he was so bad. They just said
that it was so present.
it was
And I know he's a big guy, so I know that he could have a lot without being able for it to affect him. I think more of this is me trying to wrap my brain around the fact that there was a problem and I didn't know.
Don't worry about it. Listen, nobody knows anybody else 100%. So it's and people struggle with different things in their lives that they don't necessarily want someone to know about. So that's okay.
That's true.
So 4 days before, so like 2-6 maybe.
Yeah, I may even say the 4th because I remember maybe it was the 6th. No, I think it was the 4th. We went in on the 5th.
Okay.
And then we were hoping they would get him in by Friday, and they couldn't. So I think it was the 4th.
Okay.
But again, I can text you when I get back because I have all that over.
So this idea sort of started with your brother-in-law, and then we've sort of reached out and talked to some other people. They say the type of leg injury he had, where you have a spiral fracture of the tib fib with then a lateral push, is very almost impossible to get from slipping on the ice, unless your foot gets wedged somewhere, and then there's a strong torsional movement of twisting, and then a push before he goes down. So did he describe that injury to you?
Yeah. So he, many years ago, in fact, with my family, he actually sprained that ankle, almost broke it playing basketball. Since then, he has sprained it several times. So his right ankle has always been weak. So much so that when he did hurt it that first time, it was so, swollen, huge. He thought he had broken it. It's never been the same. He has had problems with his right ankle for years. So that's why I'm surprised Matt said that, just because I think he was there when he heard it, and he's twisted it several times since. And he called me immediately after it happened. It was literally the time that he would have been finishing up to come home.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I think I just broke my ankle. And he said, I'm in the car now. I said, do I need to come get you? And he said, I'm going to try to drive home, but it is in so much pain, and I'm sure and he explained it. I said, what happened? I was walking out of the office, slipped on the ice, it came right underneath me, and he was carrying two really huge things. So he had his huge office table and he had this, that big bin of files. And just the way, the weight of all that, I think crushed. And as he told me, he showed me how it just crumbled right under him with the table right over it. So
You don't have
we'll
any
never
concerns
know.
about.
I don't. For everything he told me, the timing, every bit of it. Again, I may be completely this naive wife.
Now, Brian Drake had just switched over from a different office in Sandpoint to a new office in Sandpoint. And he would then contact Weemy, who was the owner of that building where he had his alleged slip and fall. And he told Weemy that he just had a slip and fall, nothing that crushed him or anything like that, but that he wanted to make sure that nobody else slipped and fell in the parking lot. Then Brian would go on to sue Weemy for this slip and fall and tried to go after their insurance. And this was right after Brian moved into this new building.
He had a problem with someone and someone had hurt him.
Yeah.
Do you think that he would tell you that? Or do you think he would try to protect you by concealing that?
I think he would tell me, but I also think through that was his Standpoint day and they all saw him at the office. So that's an office that a lot of people come in and out, like even other people that are the insurance agents.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody would have seen that. Like somebody would have, you know what I mean? Like Garth and all of his people all
That's Garth Weemy.
old office work there every day. So it's not like he's the only one in the office and nobody would have seen something happen.
Did you look?
Nobody did see this happen. Also, this would straight be in direct contradiction of what one of his patients said in their interview, that they saw Brian Drake with his leg already in his slinging on January 25th, 2020, because she saw him on that date and he already had that on or was complaining about his foot. And in his records would show, when you go back and look at the scheduling, that was the last time that she had an appointment with Brian Drake. So I double checked to make sure that the person and the patient that was talking about the date of this accident couldn't have been mistaken. When did she see Brian Drake last? And lo and behold, her memory served her right, because all she did was look at her schedule to say when the last time that she saw Brian Drake was, and he had that with his leg already. And that was January 25th, 2020. And this just totally goes over the heads of these detectives.
Get Life 360 to see if he was anywhere else that day?
I didn't.
The detectives asked her if she looked at her Life 360 app to see if he went anywhere else that day. And she says that she didn't look at it. This would be 100% a lie to Van Leuven and Tolson, because Jennifer Drake took a screenshot of her Life 360 app on 3/13/2020, the next day, showing how Brian Drake's phone was moving because it was being transported during with the evidence. So this right here, that statement, I know is a lie, because she took a screenshot of their Life 360 app on 3/13/2020.
Something happened.
Did you look at Life 360 to see if he was anywhere else that day?
I didn't.
Um,
And Yeah, we talked about that, didn't we? I actually forgot to look at that.
I would like to get that, and maybe a search warrant to Life 360 is an easier way to do it, but I need to preserve as much of that as possible, showing his movements, because it looks like he had his Google locator turned off on his phone, so that information is not available on his phone from Google.
Well, we should do that. Didn't you say after a month?
That is a absolute lie. I have the return of the Google search warrant, and with the email addresses being that of the families, that all the different ones that they had, that search warrant of the emails that came back, that's how they were able to track his locations. I've never claimed that I used the cell towers to do anything with Brian Drake's case. In fact, I did not. I've used the Google application that he was using for his email. He forgot to mess with that one. And that one is how I was able to track his longitude and latitude with his movements every step of the way, all the days of his life. Now, the question is when do they serve the search warrant upon Google for that information? Because right here, maybe they are telling Jennifer Drake the truth in terms of that, but I don't believe that they are.
You can't do that or something? So we. I forgot to look at that.
I would like to get that, and maybe a search warrant to Life 360 is an easier way to do it, but I need to preserve as much of that as possible, showing his movements, because it looks like he had his Google locator turned off on his phone, so that information is not available on his phone from Google.
Well, we should do that. Didn't you say after a month you can't do that or something? So we should do that really fast, right?
Well, I said that the app seems to suggest that we can get 30 days of it, but then you said you already have access to it.
Well, on mine, yeah.
Yeah.
And I still have it right here, but it says weekly driving summary. Oh, you're right. You said you had to see. I had you. It says no network or phone off since March 18th. So now it's not letting me get it. But like, see if this is, so here's my son.
I have it. Our family uses it, and
Oh.
I know how it works, but
Why is it not?
Boom! She says she has her son on it.
Yeah, no, it's making me upset.
okay, we'll get to that. So after the February 10th surgery, how long was he off work?
Until February 10th. I think he went back to work. They said to stay off of it. They recommended for 2 weeks. And I want to say he tried to see patients here, just a couple of them on the 19th, Wednesday the 19th.
February 19th?
February 19th. Like a week and a half later, he had gotten that prosthesis piece and he started like even around the house. He went and saw like maybe 3 or 4 and realized this is going to be challenging. I'm going to take this slow. And then he took those 2 days off that I remember, and he started his first full week of patients February 24th.
Okay, so the practice in Sandpoint, where was the office before the current office?
It was the Sandpoint Family Medicine, and it was in the basement.
Do you remember the road that was off of?
It's that is it Main Street? Like when you come off of the highway and you come down and you go around. I know this is so hard, but I don't know. It's called Sandpoint Family Medicine and Urgent Care, and it's 302 South First Avenue in San Quentin. And he rented there for years. Just they had a whole basement, they had a room, and he just made it into it. And they had their own entrance.
All right, I went ahead and found the date. April 14th, 2020. So this interview was 3/26/2020. So on April 14th, 2020, in the District Court of the First Judicial District of the State of Idaho, in and for the County of Boundary, the application of a search warrant for 3 Google email accounts associated with the homicide victim Brian S. Drake. DRB Drake21 at gmail.com, Drake Chiropractic of NI North Idaho at gmail.com, and Drake Fam of at gmail.com. Those 3 emails, location data, any location data currently stored in relation to the email addresses identified above or below, the device ID, as well as location information can be in the form of historical records. Specific to Google, this would include any reports of device activity that would include the approximate latitude and longitude of the device at the time of the activity, direction and distance from the tower, and other location-related information. That is what came back. That is what I used to pinpoint all of Brian Drake's movements on the day of the murder, as well as Jennifer Drake.
And then when did they decide they were going to renovate or whatever?
During the holidays. So between Christmas and New Year's, Brian had taken it off. He always takes between Christmas and New Year's, and he had gotten a text from them. And all it said was, we're going to renovate the basement. We're putting in a whole new medical group, and whoever's renting down here, we're asking them to leave. And, you know, he had been renting for years, but never really signed a contract. They had just let him, so he didn't have any reason to.
Did they offer him space somewhere else? Or?
No.
No.
That's when he was considering, should I just leave Sandpoint? And he had several patients step up and go, no, I have an office, or.
Okay. So then he went from there, he went to where?
He went to this one.
506 Alder Street?
Is that the
That's the address.
insurance?
That's the address you sent me. The
Yeah.
insurance office.
The entrance, yeah.
And when did he start that practice then?
It must have been within the next couple of weeks. Because I think he went to one other place just for the week. It was like and I don't know where it was. I remember him saying there's a couple offices. I was like, so you're just going to make your patients guess which week you're going to be where? And then that's when he said, nope, this Garth is actually going to let me stay here. But I know there was one in between, and I don't know where that was.
Garth, that's the landlord?
Yes.
Is that also a patient?
Yes.
Okay, what's Garth's last name?
Oh, you know what, I might know. Sorry, because we've been texting.
Did you go to that office?
I did.
Did he have anything there? Any records or anything?
No records, but he had all of his office. I had another chair and a stool and all that stuff. But I talked to him and his wife, and I don't have his last name. I have it in here. It's Garth.
Do you have a phone number?
Yes. Yes. Sorry. 208-290-9595.
Okay, 208.
Oops. 208-290-9595.
290.
9595.
Okay.
So after the new year, you think it was about 2 weeks before you settled into the 506 Alder Street?
Mm-hmm. With three Garth will know exactly.
The AA meetings, do you
Yes.
have any point of contact or anybody else that you know that attended those meetings with us?
I don't know anybody anywhere.
Do you know if he ever attended AA meetings anywhere else?
Yeah, he did AD meetings down in Austin.
Did he do them in Bonners Ferry or in Sandpoint or in Montana or anything? No. Okay. The Southern friends talked about the last trip you went on. There was discussion of him inappropriately texting a woman or women on social media, and that he was in trouble with you for that, and that you kind of talked to the wives about it. He kind of talked to the guys about it. You know what I'm talking about?
No, he doesn't even have social media.
Just telling you what they
I
said.
know.
It was like maybe instant messaging or texting or something, or maybe, I don't know what it was, but there was something about another woman or women, and that you found something on his phone, and you talked to their wives about it, and he talked to them about it in the hot tub, and they were kind of trying to hold him accountable for that.
Oh my gosh, no. I
No?
don't know anything about that.
Because they independently brought it up. So something had to have been said.
And they know that I knew?
Yeah, that you talked to at least one of the wives about it. Well, I don't know whether this was him looking at something on the internet or browsing on the internet, or whether this was an actual communication with an actual person. Or they just knew that and they didn't ask too many questions. They just knew that he felt like he was in the doghouse with you because you were just
texted, or he had been.
What we heard was that he had messaged a woman or women using social media, and they didn't know whether you'd found out about it independently and caught him, or whether he admitted to you that he did it. They didn't know that, but they just knew that you knew, and that he was in trouble for that.
Oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. I don't remember any of that. Especially, it seems so odd because he's never on social media. Literally, I've seen him post on social media twice.
If you don't remember, you don't remember. It's odd to me that they independently brought the same thing up and kind of had the same story to tell, though.
Well, they talk among themselves a lot, so I'm wondering if sometimes Bubba makes things up. He told me something else this week, and I was like, I know that's not true. He told me that he gave Brian some cash, and I looked at him and said, I know that's not true. He's like, oh yeah, I did. And I'm like, he showed me the cash he gave me, like right after we left.
We'll get into that. I have lots of money questions. We'll get into that. So it doesn't remember.
I am so sorry.
Well, we're just looking for motives here. So he was contacting some gal via social media.
Then I would like to
let's know who that is and figure that out. So
I would not withhold that one bit.
Okay.
My husband definitely had his secret words. I would not keep that from you. I don't remember any of that.
My take on the whole Jennifer not remembering things is she needs to come across as, I don't remember the things that you're referring to, because if I don't remember them, then I couldn't possibly have that as a motive to be mad at Brian, because I don't know what you're talking about. If Jennifer Drake was to know about X, Y, and Z, that would then give Jennifer Drake motive. But if you don't know something, then you don't have motive. And that's what Jennifer Drake's clinging to in all of her interviews, is that she does not know these things. So then therefore, how could Jennifer Drake have a motive to kill her husband? Okay? That's what she is trying to portray. And I say trying, as we either have to determine if she's telling the truth or if she's not. Does she not know about these things? Is she playing dumb?
They said that was the 2019 trip. Do you remember people sitting in a hot tub?
Oh yeah.
No.
They were all talking about, and I remember them even praying in the hot tub.
Right. Yeah, they said they prayed about it.
but I remember it wasn't about Brian. That's what's so funny.
What was there a discussion about somebody else doing this?
Yeah, well, not necessarily that. They were praying specifically about being accountable to all their wives, and one of them happens to be his friend Paul Lacoste, who happened to now leave his wife, and they're in the middle of this whole haranguing thing. And so that's so weird that they said it was about him.
Yeah. Okay. So we've heard, I keep harping on this, and I don't mean to harp on it, but it bugs me.
And I know people are out there listening that are Brian Drake's friends and that were actually physically present for that. You know what took place in the hot tub in 2019. Listening to Jennifer answer these questions, this does not infuriate you as being Brian's good friend. You're not infuriated with what you're hearing. I implore you, if you were and claim to be Brian's best friend and good friend, these interviews should bother you.
And I've got different answers from different people as to why they think he was spending the night in Bonner's Ferry.
Okay.
And your answer is because he was seeing patients the next morning in Sandpoint?
I can tell you 100%. I'm the one who actually kept pushing that.
Spend the night up there?
Yeah, because he would come home every night.
Yeah.
And he would get home at like 9.
Yeah.
He would leave at 5 the next morning in order to get back up there. Actually, he'd be up at 5 in order to leave by 6.
Yeah.
To get back up there. And that was when I was finally like, let us just buy you a pull-out couch and just have a place. Because for a while, I was like, just stay at a hotel. And so he stayed at a hotel until I went up there and saw the hotel he was staying in. And it was horrible. I was like, oh, this is horrid. Why don't we just get you a couch and you can just stay here? It was saving on gas. It was saving on time. He was driving so much. I didn't feel bad. And I was...
Now, the hotel, this is the question, is what hotel was Brian Drake staying at? I don't believe that Jennifer Drake would be saying that the Kootenai River Inn hotel with the casino is horrible. That is a beautiful hotel and accommodations. No way would she be saying that that's a horrible hotel. Now, there is a hotel that's right across from Super One and Away, and that hotel was ran at the time of this time frame by none other than Isaac Funderburg's mom, who is also has known associates and has done it herself with the drug world, with drugs. So Isaac Funderburg's mom and stepfather, they were running the sales of the Kootenai Inn, not the casino, but this other motel. And that would be Isaac Funderburg's mom.
And there were many times he'd be like, I'll just come home tonight. I'll end up seeing the kids. And I can, oh, you're going to have to leave. You're literally going to be home after they go to sleep. And you're going to leave before they get up. And so I always felt bad. I know 100% the reason that he was staying up there is because of my beckoning. And I mean, if he wanted to come home, it's not like I was against it. I was feeling so bad because he was driving so much. And I thought through this. I know people are thinking probably the most horrible things because when you look at it from the outside, he's gone 4 days a week. He spends the night up there. I've known this for years that people probably, even if our people that know him, are thinking, why does he do this? It paid the bills. He never had to market. There were so many people wanted him.
Were you trying to get him to step away from the Bonner's Ferry practice, to not have to go up there?
Yeah.
And was that sort of your, discussions with Craig about trying to open some of their business down here up and that whole thing?
So we opened Hayden, the Hayden office, maybe a year and a half ago. That's when we were just praying. I was like, honey, your kids are getting old enough to where when you are spending the night, you're missing soccer games, they're at the age they need you more than they need me. And so we're like, let's start praying about opening this up. The problem is that because he was gone 4 days a week, he never had time to actually work on trying to grow Hayden. The other two practices literally grew overnight because everything was word of mouth. Everything. He didn't have to market. I mean, we marketed out the nose in Austin. Here, it just grew organically, so easy and so fast, and people just, there was a hole that needed chiropractic up there, and that was why it was so hard for it to leave. It's like, my days are so full. It's not like they're starting to slow down to where they don't need me.
Mhm.
And yet Hayden wasn't. I mean, yeah, Hayden has how many chiropractors? He knew he was going to have to start doing marketing. He was going to have to start going to do shows. And so it was easy for him to sit back and not work on this. But I was like, until you create this void and you step away from this, we're not going to have time to work on Hayden. So that was like for the last year, just this desire to get him back down. And so that's why Brian, even on this last New York trip, was talking to Bubba about, he's always wanted a wellness clinic and da. So Bubba was like, I'll help you. And that's when I stepped in and said, please no, because I want us to learn to work harder. I mean, smarter, not harder. You're just going to make him work more. And he's getting older. He can't do this till he's 65. It's hard on him. So I was trying to think through other ways with which we could invest in something else.
Okay, so business-wise,
Yeah.
why not go where the patients or the clients are? Why abandon the clients and try to build?
Because our home is here. Our kids go to an amazing charter school. Amazing. They have opportunities they don't get anywhere else. We love our church. Our kids are so involved in church, as with Brian and I. It's where all of our family, all our friends. I don't like Bonner's Ferry. I mean, I just,
Okay,
you know,
I'm just saying the money tree's up there.
yeah. And so that's why we were in this dilemma. That just, he was driving and it was totally supporting us. He helped a lot of people. Every time I would go up and we would go to, you know, their little fairs or people after people. Your husband is such a godsend. Your husband's, and so I know he was loved and appreciated. And they all seemed like really down to earth, good people. Like even when they would come into town and we would get together. So I knew some of them, but I was not willing, and I don't think Brian was either. He's like, I don't want to live in Bonner's Ferry. Our kids used to go to Christian school here for several years, so that was important to us, and they didn't have that up there. And then they moved to the charter school, and so we just are involved in a lot of things, and we weren't willing to actually give that up for Bonner's Ferry.
I understand that.
So we were trying to connect those two by moving him out of there.
And so Bubba was willing.
This was unreasonable, guys. All of his patients, he had full days on Mondays and Thursdays. That was when he was in Bonner's Ferry. He saw hardly anybody on Fridays. His Tuesdays in Sandpoint. Wednesdays, I don't even believe he worked on Wednesdays. If he saw a couple patients in Hayden, remember, Post Falls is by Hayden, Coeur d'Alene, Hayden. That's that area. Brian has burned every bridge with those other chiropractors in that area, and they said that he was basically stealing patients. So that's why Brian there was nothing for him to do in that area, because all the patients that he stole from these other chiropractors were the Mennonite community, were the people in Bonner's Ferry, were people from Libby, Montana. When she says that that's where the money was, that's what paid the bills, that is 100% true. That's where Brian Drake made his money. Because that's where Brian Drake's patients were that he stole of Scott Crawford and of Amy Strapolsta. So now and he wants to just go and be in Hayden, you basically are starting all over. How do you plan on doing that?
To put money into this project?
Well, they just mentioned it. So there was no business plan. There was he was just like, I'll help you start a wellness clinic. You know, Brian's like, yeah, that sounds good. And I remember him coming to me saying, he said, and for me, I'm the business person. I am thinking how much work, how much he's now going to have to work even more. Brian does not do well with stress, change. This was all going to land on me.
So he also mentioned franchises and maybe storage units and.
So I'm the one that came to Bubba about 2 months ago. We've been like for 6 months, and I did up a whole business plan saying, if you're willing to invest, I'm out of a place I can put some more time and effort into this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do some business. I learned the world of storage units. And so we had been marketing about a month, several weeks, right up until he died. And that was like the business plan. And Bub was like, this is not going to happen because the land is so expensive there. And he was freaking out, going, are you living in Destin? Like, come up here and look at it. It's insane. It's growing so fast. This is the level at which we should do it. He's like, no, why don't you go ahead and do, I'm opening up all these Subway shops, whatever the sub thing is. And it's like, for me, that's like the next step from hell. I can't work in it.
You don't have to work in them to own them. Most
Well,
people I
it's
know that
true.
own a whole bunch of them.
Well, that's true, but he wants to own it and have us manage it. And I was like, no. Like, thinking of having teenagers coming in and out of this, that to me is a nightmare.
Well, right.
You know?
That's a whole other topic with me, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Bubba and you were planning this, not
Yeah,
Bubba and Brian.
Brian was on the Marcos with us, but he knew I was doing all the work. Like, I did the whole business plan. I'd sit there and ask Brian ideas, but I run all the chiropractic business. Brian sees the patients. I've always done the business side. He doesn't know anything about taxes. He doesn't know anything about computer, the banking, anything. I did all that. So he was in on the Marcos. He would be the one I'd sit there and throw ideas off of, and what do you think of this? So he was in the know of it all. He just didn't do any of the paperwork stuff.
So Bubba says that he knows your finances because you provided your finances to him so he could look at them.
Yeah,
Is that
so
true?
no. So Brian, so even when he told me, he said something about Brian had come home and he had actually, or no, I walked into the house and they were talking business, and he said, I did end up telling Bubba that this is all we owe. He wanted to ask us, what do we owe? So he at least had a picture. So we didn't provide him with anything. Brian just told him over the phone, okay, we owe on our house, we own our 2 cars, and we own one credit card. And so he was like, oh, wow. And that is the whole landscape of the business. And he said, I did end up telling Bubba that this is all we owe. He wanted to ask us, what do we owe? So he at least had a picture. So we didn't provide him with anything. Brian just told him over the phone, okay, we owe on our house, we own our 2 cars, and we own one credit card. And so he was like, oh, wow. And that is the whole landscape of everything he knows. And I was even going to ask you, because he goes, let's talk about money the day before he left. Are you okay? And I said,
After
yeah.
the funeral.
After the funeral.
Okay.
He went to leave, and he's like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I've got life insurance. He goes, I know, $1 million. And I said, how do you know that? And I was wondering if you guys told him. I can imagine that you would.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that.
But I
part,
asked him $1 million.
He did say he knew about your finances and all of this stuff because of the business plan that you guys were working on.
So the business plan I have, that I still have, has nothing to do with our finances. The only thing he knew was that one minute conversation with Brian before I walked in, when Brian said, and our finances are easy. We literally owe on 4 things. I mean, they're all large things, but they're the house, the 2 cars, and 1 credit card. And so we're not deep. We didn't have a whole lot to tell him. So maybe that's what he meant by I know all of their finances.
So this is a professional businessman. This man has made, according to him, he has made a lot of money
He does think of very
doing
much.
business deals.
Yes. And he works with FEMA, and he works with a lot
So-
of different things. Millions.
Okay. So he's paying for your
Makes sense.
vacations.
Yes.
2 vacations in a row, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Mhm.
And he spent all this money.
He paid for everything. Now, part of this was because his best friend, Mike, Brian's best friend, was dying. And I'm sure he told you all that. In fact, Mike died 4 days after Brian did. So that was a lot of, like, even the New York trip was solely for Mike. It was everything Mike wanted to do. But yes, he makes very good money, but he also, he talks a lot. So even when he said $1 million, and I said, how did you know that? He goes, Brian told me, and I thought, I know that's not true. 1, Brian doesn't talk about our money. 2, I don't know that Brian even remembers what he has. And 3, I don't think he would have told him. Now I could be wrong, but I don't know why he would have even asked, hey, do you have life insurance? You know what I mean? 4 months ago, in the middle of talking about all this stuff, why would he ask Brian if he had life insurance?
Well, if you're discussing trying to help out your friend financially and to put him and their family in a good financial position, that would definitely be one of the questions I would want to know is
What is
your family covered? Do you have life insurance? I mean, that seems reasonable to me, but
Okay, that just seemed odd to me, but
If you're gonna go into partnerships with somebody, you wanna make sure if they die, you're not left with bills. Does that make
that's a good
sense?
point. Totally makes
Well,
sense.
So the money from the business, about what percentage of his patients pay with a card versus what percentage pay with cash?
I don't know about that. I can tell you, I know I just got a thing in the mail stating how much went on the card, like how much. But in first, I'd have to look at our taxes because then I can tell you exactly what came through the card and how much you paid.
Based on what I've seen, it looks like it's about 50.
Okay, that is completely and utter bullshit. They have what you call like a square. And at the end of each night, there's a settlement batch out. So each day, the following day, depending on how Brian had this set up, you would either get your card deposits within 24 hours or 48 hours, depending on how much money you were willing to, what percentage you were willing to give up is pretty much how they gauged how quickly you wanted your money. It was a slightly bigger, percentage that they were going to take, but you could have your, access to your money sooner. Now, this would then be deposited straight to your bank account, so Jen here saying that she would have to go look at her taxes to figure out how that would all be. That is completely and utter lies and bullshit. First of all, your taxes don't specify. I mean, I guess you could say cash receipts versus credit card receipts for sure. But all she would have to do is look at one of her bank statements and see Brian doing a cash deposit versus the merch settlement deposit, which was happening, every day, every other day, like clockwork. It was there. And so this right here, 100%, and Jen and Brian had a joint bank account, which everything was visible. They shared their bank account.
50 to me.
Okay.
Does that seem right to you?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Which does come up with a new problem before I forget, is it's dawning on me that I forgot that I know that we talked about, there were some people who prepaid. And now I'm worried because I know that he probably owes money to some of these patients, and I need to somehow get through his files to figure out who I need to pay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Make sure they get their money back because they didn't. Now, I don't know how many. I don't know that there's that many that normally do it, but I need to.
Mm-hmm. Do they have? He seemed to communicate with his patients mostly by text.
Yeah.
We have had his phone turned off or in airplane mode rather.
Yeah.
For the most part, so we haven't received any new texts. I could turn it on and let everything come in, and then make a list of those and send them to you if you'd like.
That'd be great. Maybe you might even. I don't know. That might be a good idea. The only people I didn't do by text are ones who just didn't text. It means they were older, non-Hispanic. They would always call.
Did he have an email that he gave out on his business cards that they might have to be able to send an email that you can access?
Yes, and I actually haven't looked at that.
So the three emails that we seem to find are drbdrake21@gmail.com. Is that one?
Yes.
Drake Chiropractic of NI@gmail.com.
Yes.
And Drake Family of 6 @gmail.com.
Yeah, no. Yes, but no, his main one is. Oh, yeah, that's on his card, isn't it? The Gmail is on his card?
These are on his phone, coming up as ones that he's entered in his phone and apps.
He has a Yahoo, drbdrake@yahoo.com. That's the one I have access to that is just pretty much, so it's his email from Texas. And it has almost all just trash because he's had it for so many years. It's stuff from the
Right there, they talk about those emails, and she tries to get them on the path of going for the Yahoo trash email. Oh, he does have that email on his business card. The emails is how I tracked Mr. Brian Drake.
with school, but pretty much everything that had to do with the practice was, yeah.
Okay. So that's one of the things that that Craig talked about, and to be honest with you, there's a text conversation between your husband and Craig, where your husband is thanking him for the money.
So 4,000,
No,
not 10. Did you say 10,000 on it?
he says thank you for the 6,000. He says, I'm only going to tell my wife about 4,000 of it, and I'll explain why later.
He did say that on a text.
And then he says to me later, he goes, not only did I give him 6,000, later I gave him another 4,000. So I gave him a total.
Given him 4,000. Did you mail it?
I don't know. He didn't say. He just said I did give him a total of 10,000, and he said he told me that he was making between 8,000 and 10,000 a week, and he goes, "Do you think that's right?" And so I just kind of did some rough calculus of what I think he was probably making a week, and I think he was probably making between 6 and 8 a week, looking at.
Yeah,
A full
depending on whether he did a full week, but he did 10.
Boom. Right there. The $6,000 that he says that he got and received and wanted to thank him, and he was only going to tell his wife about 4 of it, not all 6. I believe that this is the $5,918 deposit from PayPal. Because when you use PayPal to transfer over money, if you do it instantly, they're going to take like $75 of that, $6,000. If you wait a couple days, then you could possibly and you go still to your bank and transfer it and not due to for that instant transfer, then you have a chance of maybe paying just like $1 or $2, possibly not even any money. But I believe that 5,000 was a $5,918 deposit that came through the Drake account in December of 2019. And I believe that was at $6,000. And if I am accurate, Miss Jennifer Drake had access to know exactly how much that was. That was not a $4,000 deposit. That was $6,000, but you lost a couple bucks because of the transfer fee because you wanted it immediately.
1,000.
Some weeks, sometimes.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm getting at is that for a North Idaho income, he's making between 150 and 200,000 a year.
No, so pretty generally, he's making right about 120,000 a year on almost all my and I have it down to the penny. I keep it. So now that's maybe he's making more, and I don't know it.
Well, we're gonna at this point in our investigation, we're gonna do everything we can to figure out what happened. So one of the things we're gonna turn towards your finances or his finances, and we're gonna look at how much. We're gonna go back at every client for the last year, look at exactly how much money he should have brought in, or at least real close, and then look at all the expenses and look where the money went and see if there's a discrepancy in there somewhere. And we'll have a financial accountant do that for us.
Okay.
I'd like access to your bank records and credit card records and tax records. If you're uncomfortable giving those to me, we can get them through legal means, but it would be easier if you just provided them.
Totally fine with that.
Okay.
I don't have bank statements because everything is online.
Okay.
So I don't know if how do you do
Just
that?
online. You can
Just
down.
give you the,
You can even just I don't know which bank do you bank at.
P1FCU.
So I bank at US Bank. There's a feature on the banking app where you can download
All the
on
statements.
spreadsheets or on an Excel file.
Oh.
You can do the statements too, but sometimes the Excel files are easier for us to use.
Okay.
So if you can just download them for the last year,
Yeah.
Something like that.
And you want them specifically on Excel?
If that's possible, that would be easier
Okay.
to take a look at because they're just going to convert them to an Excel spreadsheet in the end if they're actual statements.
And you want the last year?
Yeah, well, maybe go back to January 2019 to up through March of
Okay.
2020.
Okay.
We heard from one of his friends that he was spending a lot of money on it was claimed that he sort of said, "Hey, aren't you going to get in trouble with your wife for spending money on this?" And his response was that he was in a cash business, so he would be able to have cash to spend on things that you wouldn't know about.
And what was it he was buying?
He was drinking, they were out drinking. And so my question is that do you think, our minds go to all kinds of things. Did he have another life? Was there something else that was going on? Did he have an apartment? Several people talked about, I think they just assumed that he had an apartment in Sandpoint or he rented a room. We found no evidence that that's true.
Yeah.
and the office mate, Kit Hartman's mother-in-law, who does the books, she would get there early in the morning sometimes, and she says his car was always there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. It's not like he was somewhere else.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some other things that are, probably also uncomfortable.
Let's all be realistic here. I cannot believe that Van Leeuwen just tried to say that, well, his car was there, so that means he was there. Give me a fucking break, okay? And he knows that that's not true. Just because someone's car is somewhere does not mean that that's where they're at. I mean, you've been a detective for long enough to know that if you're going to conceal where your cell phone is, you're going to leave your cell phone home when you go do a crime. You know that you could leave your car wherever you wanted to make it seem like, you were somewhere that you weren't, okay? If this guy was going to the lengths to shut off and turn off his Google locations or leave his phone so that he could then go bounce around, okay? I'm sure he knew to leave his car that way because God knows who Jennifer's talking to. And if he saw, oh, I saw his car there. Come on, man.
But I got to tell you, we're just looking for something. We don't have any evidence that your husband did anything wrong.
Yeah.
But we hope there's a motive. So perversely, we're wanting some reason for someone to want to kill him so we can follow that trail.
Yeah, I get it.
So anyway, that's kind of where we're going. But the money thing, I don't know why he would not want you to know about $2,000 or $6,000 gift. What was the reason? Was he paying somebody back he didn't want you to know about? Was he? I don't know what that was around that time period.
It's really hard too because he's not somebody who buys toys. Like he doesn't, everything he does is with the family.
Right.
He's very easy to please. Like he just is not high maintenance with that. I mean, knowing that he had that cash makes me really, really.
Did he give you a gift or buy you something or buy his family something or pay for something shortly after that trip that was a surprise?
No, that was in it's most August. There are times you would, like maybe Christmas, you would have a necklace or something, but our love language never big on gifts. We just weren't real extravagant.
Mm-hmm.
So no, even the gifts himself, and unless he's giving it to somebody else or giving it to another woman or.
Oh, we don't.
Well, I know, but my brain's going there too. I will accept whatever it is that's there if it will lead us to answers. He's never given me any reason to think that he was spending money unless it was he does know how I feel about drinking. And I'm probably even more of a Nazi just because I don't like it at the house, especially the kids. So maybe it was just to have cash in order to drink with them.
But he's got cash every day. People are giving him cash.
And I never know how much he brings home. Like I'm never on him. I never am a Nazi. Like I don't look at his books to see how busy he was. So he has full reign of being able to say, yeah, he kept 100.
Right.
Like we've never had those arguments over money, and
right.
I've never.
None of this is true. None of this is true. They shared an account. All the accounts were tied together. The money would be transferred amongst accounts. The statements were all printed out together. You would see if Jennifer had her own card, everything that she did with that card is in, under her name. Then his card and everything he did. Okay. Then when money would be transferred between the different accounts within that one account, like it's all there. It's all there. And so Jennifer most certainly had access to it all and to know everything. So yeah, if something was light, she would know.
Given him a reason to hide it from me. Let me put it that way. So when you think through like the years, and he stayed pretty regular on how much he would bring in every week.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, every time he would take time off, that's nothing.
Right.
So for the last many years, he's been pretty steady about the same because he always usually takes the same week off. May, week before New Year's, Christmas, New Year's.
This thing with the surgeries and the time off, that had to really hurt you financially.
Oh, we are totally in debt because we had to take some of the money that goes towards his medical bills as we were saving up for the summer. We even rented our house out, hoping to save up in order to do some things. And all that money floated us through summer. Like we were starting to actually get savings.
Right.
It all went towards 8 weeks of no income. I mean, it was bad.
Wait, hold on. What was that? Listen to this one more time, guys.
Before New Year's, Christmas, New Year's.
This thing with the surgeries and the time off, that had to really hurt you financially.
Oh, we are totally in debt because we've had to take some of the money that goes towards his medical bills because we were saving up for the summer. We even rented our house out, hoping to save up in order to do some things. And all that money floated us.
Rented your house out? When did you rent your house out, and where did you go when you rented your house out? What are the dates on these? These investigators don't ask about this. Brian didn't have surgery until 8/22, and then he was off for 7 weeks, okay? So those kids were in school. So you can't just go to I don't know, your parents in Montana, which is nowhere by the school. Excuse me?
Through summer, we were starting to actually get savings.
Right.
It all went towards 8 weeks of no income. I mean, it was bad.
So thinking about that, the trip to New York was before the surgery.
Yeah.
Surgery is August 22nd, so the trip to New York was about when?
July. Exact date.
After the paddleboard injury, because he's unsure. He says he doesn't know if you should go on the trip because he's worried about not working.
Yes. So it was before the big fall.
Right.
But it was after the paddleboard. It's where he was in pain, but he hadn't
big fall at the office.
He was incapacitated. But the actual date of Bubba's trip was it was July 19th, 2019, 19th through the 28th. So it's 2 weekends, 1 week.
So was he trying to squirrel some money away? I mean, do you remember, because what we're talking about, if Craig's telling the truth, then I believe that for sure there was 6,000 because Brian texted it. Whether there was another 4,000 or not, I haven't seen that, but talking about approximately $6,000 in a short period of time.
Maybe he actually held it off so that if we were struggling or something, he just didn't want me to worry. So he'd say, "Yeah, I made 2,000 this month, or this week, or whatever," and he didn't really.
Right.
So maybe that's just maybe Sandpoint wasn't so busy, or maybe it was a bad week, and so he would just make me feel better because I did all the bills. He never knew. He just knew, can we pay bills this week? Are we good to go? Yeah. And so.
Okay.
That's not true.
I think we touched on this before. Were there any issues with anybody or any neighbors or patients or anything in Sandpoint?
No.
Okay, so an allegation, this is kind of a weird one, came up that this guy in Sandpoint had told some people in Sandpoint that his wife had had an affair with Brian in the past, and that's kind of what caused their marriage to break up. We've interviewed her at length. We've interviewed him at length, and their son at length. I don't think that the affair occurred. She denies it. She says no. Essentially, her story and the son's story and sort of the husband's story too, if you read between the lines, is she had gone to him as a patient, and her son, who was then 13, was in the waiting room and would tell the mom, I think he likes you. And then would tell dad, I think that the doctor likes mom, and I think mom likes the doctor. And the son kept picking at this. And so she came to him 5 or 6 times. And she said he was really helping my back, but it wasn't worth the stress that my son was causing talking to my husband about me liking the doctor. So I stopped going to him. Their marriage had broken down over a period of years, and they were probably headed to divorce no matter what. But this was just one more thing that the husband, and to be honest with you, the husband didn't really seem to care. I was hoping that we had like this rage-filled, jealous husband that had been pent-up anger that was going to go, that doesn't seem to be the case. And they seem to have an alibi also that we're going to prove. But
Who was it?
well, I'm going to show you a picture, see if you remember this person, and then tell you a story that they told me. Remember her?
No.
Stephanie Butler. Does that ring a bell?
This story is amazing.
Okay. So the odd story was, that came from Mr. Butler, was that sometime after she had started seeing Brian, and I'm not sure whether she was still going to him or not, or whether this was after she stopped going to him, but they were with their family at Silverwood, and you were with your family at Silverwood, and one of their kids said, hey, that's the doctor that mom is seeing or used to see or whatever, and that you guys were sitting watching the magic show.
Yeah.
And you were kind of down below at the tables, and they were in the bleachers up above.
Okay.
And after the show was over, during the show, the magician was throwing cards out, and his wife caught one of the cards. And your husband turned and looked to see who caught the card, and he said out loud, oh, you caught the card. You're the one that caught the card. And then after the show, she and one of her kids came up and was introduced to you, or talked to Brian with you there. Any of this ringing a bell?
No.
After this, he said what was odd was he said, I thought that Brian's body language was kind of strange after he had turned and looked and realized that we were sitting there. And then after she came down and talked to you or talked to Brian, I don't know if you were formally introduced to her or not, but he then took one or more of his kids, left the area and went to go get in line for a ride. And then later, you and your husband came and got in line for the same ride. And then he said you seemed upset, and you seemed like you were staring off at a wall, and that you then left Brian and went to the end of another line. And then Brian then left, went and got you and brought you back. And you were talking, he came and brought you back like you were upset.
I am thinking I'm losing my mind.
No recollection of any of that.
None of that.
You remember being introduced to a female patient of his at Silverwood?
I will be honest. I am introduced to his patients all the time.
Okay.
And I'm embarrassed to say that I do not remember names. I'm horrible. Even in our own church, I get so embarrassed because it's like I'm after 40. I have to apologize because I can't remember people's names. I do not remember any of that.
Okay.
I don't remember a woman. I mean, I've remembered several times being introduced to people, but
And this isn't a great photo of her, but she's a fairly good-looking, in shape woman. I think that.
Did they say how many years ago this was? We go to Silverwood once a year, always in September.
17.
3 years ago? Oh gosh, no, I wouldn't remember that.
Okay.
I'm sorry. We go every September, one time, with all our family. So it's my husband, my kids, and all our extended family. So it is literally our entire group of like 21 people. And so we see people there all the time that we know, or hey, so-and-so knows so-and-so. And so, no, I don't remember that at all. And I certainly don't remember being upset about anything for
He said
No, there was a Silverwood, and that was probably about 3 years ago, that we lost my son. Literally lost my son in Silverwood. I was panicked. I was freaking out, running around trying to find authority of where my son was. So, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, because we were all split up. but I don't remember that specifically.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
I was hoping you were gonna say, "Oh yes, I remember her, that
Yeah,
tramp,
right.
and her super jealous husband."
Exactly.
That was the story I was hoping for.
Oh, I feel horrible. I just, gosh. I wish I paid more attention. I always felt like there was a world that if I met ones, I would never see them again. There were so many I met once. And in 8 years or even 6 years, it's like you meet them once, you never see them again. And I can't remember. It's very hard for me to remember those unless there's something that we interact as a family. Like I remember dances because we sat down with them and had lunch with them. I remember, Ed Byler. I remember them because we sat down as families together and actually shared a meal. But I would meet random patients here and there. So hey, so and so.
Okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
If you look at his schedules, just from an overview,
Yeah.
he always, the middle of the day is always open.
Yes.
Why?
Those are his new patients. So in Austin,
Even
we always went through like 1 or 2 companies that always gave us, mentored him through, what do you call them? Like Teach the World. They're like they help teach you how to run your business. Okay. They always recommended certain days or certain times of every single day that you would block off in case you get new patients. So a new patient will always take him anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half.
That is not true. A new patient would take Brian. He would either block off 1 extra time slot or 2. So it'd be a total of 3 15-minute slots. So it's 45 minutes. That's the max that Brian would ever block off for a new patient. Not an hour to an hour and a half. That is not true. Factually wrong based on Brian's own schedule.
So he always, even in Austin, did that either before or after lunch. Because he would see a block of patients, then he would end up seeing a new patient, always had it open for a new patient in case they called, and then he would have lunch and then he'd go on with his others.
He would see these new patients whenever they scheduled it, and if they were a new patient, he would then just block off like 1 or 2 additional spots. These were not always at the beginning of a lunchtime or the end of a lunchtime. That is factually incorrect.
So it was either before or after. So he always left a block open specifically for new patients. Now, if they're never filled, I've never, noticed to look and see how many. I know that he would tell me, I've got 2 new patients coming in or whatever. And sometimes they would call in the day of, or sometimes they call in the day before. But he always tried to keep at least a block open for anybody who would call as a new patient.
Okay.
And it was almost always before or after, like right around the meeting. So that would make sense to me, unless there's something else going on I don't know about.
Okay.
So let me just ask a question, if you will.
Yeah.
On people who are mentoring you in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
How about Dr. Pat Patzer?
Yep, Bart Patzer. Yep, that's who he started his business with, Bart Patzer.
How about Joe Henry Rodriguez?
He's a colleague, just a colleague,
Just a colleague.
but a very good friend of ours. He's also a chiropractor. But the Bart Patzer mentored him to start his business, and then from there we used like a company. Like one was called AMC.
AMC?
Mm-hmm. It was a chiropractic consulting company. That's what they were.
Okay.
One was called Teach the World, and I think the other one was called AMC. And we would pay them monthly for them to, you go to their workshops, you go to their seminars, they would teach you how to run the business. But yes, chiropractic consulting companies.
It's the side of the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Robert Miller is your father?
So on his schedule here, for instance, on the 12th, he writes in ink 50, 50, 50, 250, and then he put the little money sign next to it.
Yes.
The numbers don't quite add up, but he had, I think, 650 or 600 in cash. What was it? Something like that? Okay.
Yeah.
So are the number signs, does that mean cash?
The dollar signs means they owe me. So if there's no dollar sign, then it means that I don't need to collect today. It means they probably prepaid rather than pulling their financials every time.
Do you hear how Van Leuven just said the dollar signs or the money doesn't add up? Because what Van Leuven and Tolson did when they interviewed all the people that went to Brian Drake that day is they asked them, how did you pay that day? Did you pay with a card or cash? Okay. So they made a list of all the card paying customers that day and all the cash paying customers that day. Okay. Except they didn't ask one of the people how they paid. And that would be Eldora Gatchel. Because they didn't interview Eldora Gatchel. 2 other dipshits did. And they never re-interviewed Eldora Gatchel after Jennifer Drake literally sets up this appointment. And that's the first that she wants to talk about is Eldora Gatchel and possibly that her husband was jealous because of Eldora's ways with Brian.
When somebody comes in, usually the morning of or the day before, he would pull theirs, and it would be his note as he's adjusting. Okay, I know that it's $50 today, so he knew to collect from them. That was his code to say I need to collect from them today.
So Eldora paid $250 on this day.
Ooh, imagine that. They want to ask about Eldorsky.
Does that? But there's no dollar sign.
So I know that she was an add-in at the last minute.
So does this mean she's?
How do you know that, Jennifer? How do you know that she was added at the last minute? Because that is not correct. She was added in actually the day before. The day before Eldora did her texting to Brian Drake, and he got back to her, and he put her at 6 o'clock. And that was all scheduled, and everything was set with that. But she had gotten in touch with him actually the day before. And that's normal. When you want to talk about last minute, Brian Drake set it up with his patients that to have them text and call the day before, the day of. That was 100% normal activity of how Brian Drake ran his operation, which was not really an operation at all, but
Paid for 5 sessions?
But if it says $250, it means she must have. Did
Okay.
you ask? Because I would ask her for sure to see if she actually did pay that.
Yep.
But she was not on the schedule. Even she told me, she said, I called at the last minute saying, my brother's in town. He really needs a chiropractor. He's hurting. Can we please swing by?
none of this is true. None of this is true. Eldora Gatchel did all of her communicating with Brian Drake via text the day before and the day of. All of it was in text messages. No phone calls whatsoever were had. So this conversation is not true.
He's like, absolutely. My last patient is at this time. Come in at the very end.
So he worked.
That's not what he said at all. He did not say this is my last time that I have with this patient. He didn't say anything like that. I have the text messages and I'm revealing it all. This is 100% lies. Now, either Jennifer Drake's a liar or Eldora Gatchel is a liar to Jennifer Drake, who then was repeating the lie. So let's listen one more time in here because this is really, really important.
It's $50 today, so he knew to collect from them. That was his code to say I need to collect from them today.
So Eldora paid $250 on this day. Does that? But there's no dollar sign.
So I know that she was an add-in at the last minute.
So does this mean she's paid for 5 sessions?
But if it says $250, it means she must have. Did
Okay.
you ask? Because I would ask her for sure to see if she actually did pay that.
What the dollar sign means versus it just being written without a dollar sign, this is completely and utterly incorrect, Jennifer. That is not how your man did his booking, and you know it. If he did the number without a circle and a dollar sign, that means it was a credit card. If he put the number and it was circled with a dollar sign next to it, it means that you paid cash. That's how Brian Drake did his booking, okay? So again, if there was just a number there, like 250, and it wasn't the dollar sign after it, okay, that means it would be 250 and that you paid with a card, okay? If there was nothing next to your name, that means it's because you're a pre-payer, because you've already paid. Like Eldora on her next visit, there's going to be nothing written down by her name because she doesn't owe anything because she paid her $250. And what Brian does on the back of his charting is when somebody does pay in a prepaid situation like that, he's already putting dots underneath to block off that you then have, like, that's how many you still have before you would then have to be charged. I studied like a mofo Brian's homemade system. And the reason that Van Leuven and Tolson are asking about this amount of money that was actually in his possession is because Eldora Gatchel is a cash paying customer. Eldora always paid cash. That's how she started with Brian, and that's how Brian had always listed her as a cash paying customer. If you add up all the money, it is short. So unless Eldora paid in a card, and that means Brian went to go and write that, and then as he was getting ready to take the money / use her card, it didn't get that far because then he was murdered. And that's so important, right? And so you would want to match up the card usage when it went through the settlement system and to check off and see who all paid, and then it matches with their card payment, and then see who was also supposed to pay in cash and see how much cash he had there. But Van Leuven and Tolson, simple math, alerted them to the fact that this is light. We are light money here as far as cash goes. And then they have to listen to Jennifer Drake's explanation of how he did his booking. And again, let's listen to this one more time. This goes again with my evidence to show that if Eldora Gatchel actually had her brother seen, that's not just one appointment, that's two. So Brian would be charting that.
Something like that.
Eldora's brother had never been seen by Brian before. That means he would have to be a new patient, and he would block off, then, like I said, these 2 extra spots. That was not on the form. And then there was no new patient write-up form for Caleb, Pico, and Nazara. There was also no indication that it would be then taken 2 payments from Eldora to know that she's then going to be on her 3rd out of her 5. None of that was noted. And Brian, excuse my language, but he's a cheap ass, and he would most certainly be noting all of that stuff because he is a money-hungry motherfucker. Period.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are the number signs, does that mean cash?
The dollar signs means they owe me. So if there's no dollar sign, then it means that I don't need to collect today. It means they probably prepaid, rather than pulling their financials every time somebody comes in, usually the morning of or the day before. He would pull theirs, and it would be his note.
He doesn't need to pull any financials. It's on the same chart that he writes about them. It's on that same chart. There's no pulling of anything. It's in a binder, and it's right there. This is all fucking lies.
As he's adjusting, okay, I know that it's $50 today, so he knew to collect from them. That was his code to say I need to collect from them today.
So Eldora paid $250 on this day. Does that, but there's no dollar sign.
So I know that she was an add-in at the last minute.
So does this mean she's paid for 5 sessions?
But if it says $250, it means she must have.
Okay.
Did you ask? Because I would ask her for sure to see if she actually did pay that.
Yep.
But she was not on the schedule. Even she told me, she said, I called at the last minute saying, my brother's in town. He really needs a chiropractor. He's hurting. Can we please swing by? She was like, absolutely. My last patient was at this time. Come in and put her in.
So he worked on the brother too?
Yeah.
Okay.
He went in, and right after you saw that video is when he got up and said, hi, Doc. He had never met him before.
Okay.
And then he walked in and apparently adjusted him.
And now, wouldn't you ask her, well, hey, wouldn't this be considered a new patient? Like we just talked about 20 minutes ago about his new patients and how much time he has to take with them. So why wouldn't that happen, during the lunch hour, like you just explained to me? This is all fucking lies. This is all lies. And I love every minute of it. Lies. All lies. She should be saying that she knows nothing about any of this. Because none of this happen this way. So now she knows of something that I can factually prove that did not happen this way. Brian Drake had a couple communications via text. He never said he was squeezing her in as his, because my last patient's at this time, so come in at this time. No, Brian Drake didn't even realize that her brother was fucking coming. Okay? Again, lies.
So if there's money but no dollar sign, what's that mean?
It means most likely they just decided to go ahead and, like, he didn't think he had to get money, but maybe they were like, hey, I brought $250 to prepay. Some of these people.
You don't even know, Jennifer? I thought you were like what was it? I thought you were like his secretary. When there is no money sign next to the amount, that means it's a card, you fuck, and you know it. But you don't want the detectives to go and look at the card payments to see how much came in the cards. But guess who went and did it? Mama La did it right here. You can call me Mommy instead of Papi.
People have like families. So let's say the Bilers, like they would end up, even though maybe his account doesn't mean that he owed money.
Do you see how she goes into story time when she doesn't know? This is how I baseline Jennifer Drake. This is when I was able to figure out how Jennifer Drake is when she doesn't know something and when she's lying.
They would pay $250 because I know you're about to see my kids. You know what I mean? So this is just for our overwhelming.
How would they pay though, Jennifer? That's what they asked. What does this mean? If there is no dollar amount next to that number, what does it mean? It means it was paid on a card.
Overarching.
So if there's a
And you know how I double checked my work? Is I went through every single interview of every single patient that day and listened to how they said they paid. And the people that said they paid the cash and the people that said they paid with a card. And then I said to myself, wow, that's very interesting that Dr. Drake only had $100 bills and $50 bills. What if I was to come there with like 20s? You're telling me everybody only came there with 150s? You know, maybe Drake said, hey, if you're going to pay cash, bring the exact amount because I don't have change. Maybe he told his patients that way in the beginning, so that's why it would be always in big bills. You know, I would just expect to say if someone's paying me, they could pay in 20s, but there was only, 400, 500 and $100 bills and the 250s.
money sign and a 50, this means this person, when they come in today, is going to owe me for the session.
Yes, it means I need to collect money from them.
And so the 50 means they paid me 50?
I don't know if 50 means that's what they owe me or 50 means that I'm thinking it means that they paid me 50 because it's in pen.
Right.
So when he goes like this, as you can see, the only time pen rises is after he's done with the day. So I think he uses the pen as it goes down. Because he doesn't have a staff member, he does all this all by himself, but he has to keep it moving. So this was his system of just knowing, I can write it down instead of pulling his cards. And then at the end of the day, he would do it all together at one time.
So he ever traded work for work?
Yeah.
He did?
Yep.
So
like, some very close friends of ours here is the dentist, Johnny Yukich. He is an orthodontist, a child's dentist, and we saw his whole family for chiropractic, and he would give our children dental.
so how do you keep record of that?
He just always kept records of every time he saw them, and they kept records, and we both just said, we're not worried, but if it ever comes down, we'll sit and look at where we're at.
Okay.
Neither of us took advantage of it. It's just when we needed it. So it wasn't something that ever worried either of them, but they both kept track of who they saw. The only other person is Damon Kistler. He, a couple years ago, was laid off of work and really needed chiropractic, and he really couldn't afford it, so Brian just said he would see him. And that was in Hayden. And so he saw him for quite a while, and then he said, I'm a master stonesman, and he started back into work, and he's like, if you need me for anything, I can build you a fireplace, I can build you, so he did.
Okay, so that was trading.
Yeah.
How about up at Bonner's Ferry? Anything up there that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of, no. I know that he would see patients if they couldn't pay. He would tell me, he's like, they're struggling to pay, do you mind? Like, you do whatever you think is right, whatever you need to do.
So Jennifer Drake is under the impression that Brian Drake has a the dentist that they trade with, and then some guy that made her a fireplace. And then she just asked if what was going on up in Bonners Ferry and was there a trade going on. Huh. Well, I cannot wait to show you the trade that was going on and how Brian Drake kept records of the trades that were going on. What was Brian Drake getting from the Beck furniture that Beck wouldn't pay anything? Only the wife would. What about some police officers not paying anything? Emma Fields trade. What about the steroid guy?
About Iron Mike's gym.
Oh, yes, that is one. He got free chiropractic with Iron Mike, and I think his wife got free chiropractic
No, they didn't.
care, and he had full access to the gym at any time.
Everybody had full access to the gym at any time because I believe it was 24 hours it was open. So this was not like something that was special privilege for Brian Drake. And Mike Davis and his wife most certainly paid.
I forgot about him.
Anybody else?
Why aren't you asking about his steroid and pill popping connect over there in Naples? Why aren't you asking about that yet, Van Leuven and Tolson? You guys are clearly reading his text messages. You didn't see all the deleted text messages from a guy that he started seeing in October of 2018 and then the guy paid only one time the $250, but saw him religiously every single week for all that time. And then Brian Drake starts writing down bottles of pills. And you guys didn't catch that? You guys didn't see all those deleted text messages? Come on now. I mean, you've only been detectives for what, 20, 30 years? Tolson, come on, man.
Not that I know of.
I'm looking for an argument for money.
Yeah. Oh, I see. No, and especially just again because I didn't think he had much of a life up there. I'm aware of. I didn't even know that he ever went to a bar. So.
And we've canvassed the bars. The problem is a lot of the bars are closed because of this whole thing. So we haven't talked to every bar yet, and we haven't found a bar that said yes.
Yeah.
We found some restaurants that have said yes, but not the bar.
Yeah. So
there's one bar that's like, and we've heard he kind of had if he was going to go to a bar, he kind of preferred a dive bar versus like a club.
Oh, right.
And there's sort of that kind of a bar basically across the street where there's a bowling alley with a bar in it.
Oh.
So we'd like to talk to them because I think that's maybe the most likely place he might go. But we haven't talked to them yet because they're not open. So.
Okay. Do you know about a fight that happened in North Dakota when he was there?
Oh goodness, yes. North Dakota. Chad is the one you should definitely talk to about that. He knows any of those details. I know that it happened. It was a hard group of men. That's actually where he started with his huge back problem. He was carrying a wall and he dropped it, or another guy dropped it and he kept his, and he was like out for a day or two because his back, and that started the downhill slide.
So this is after he left Post Falls.
Yes, after he left Post Falls. He went over for like 3 months maybe. I know he came back in April of 2014 or 15, I don't remember which year that was. But he was over there for about 4 months. Chad would know exactly. Did you end up talking to Chad and his brother? I did. And yeah, I do remember him talking about.
He didn't mention that to us.
He didn't.
He
was like the foreman, so I don't know that he was.
Why would a chiropractor leave? Brian Drake would leave his family, who's in Idaho, Post Falls, leave for like 3 or 4 months and go work with his brother on like an oil rig. Excuse me?
This was definitely on the lower end trying to build, so it was not easy time. But I do remember him getting into, it was a weird, his brother had made him room with a weird homeless guy who actually had a major, he'd been in and out of jail. That would actually be a really good question for Chad. And this guy ended up taking off. But I do remember there was a scuffle of something. I couldn't tell you what it was about.
Remember, he was fined for assuming the police over a fight, for a ticket or something. Don't remember.
I don't remember the details. I just remember thinking I was mad at Chad because he made a room with him. Like this guy had a rap sheet as long as he was psycho. Really, I just remember the guy was really psycho, and I remember Brian telling me about it. But what they fought over, I don't remember.
Do you remember it being in a bar, like a bar fight?
It could have been. Everybody there drank, so that's a good question.
Do you remember the name of the town?
I have no help to you. North Dakota. I just knew North Dakota. Don't. What's some of the main ones? It was the one that was like really
Williston.
Williston. Thank you. It was Williston. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, what happened in Texas?
Oh, which part?
Well, I guess we heard several versions of this, and so I'm not sure where it started, but there was a settlement of some kind. Is that right? There was a woman that was a patient at his practice. Remember this?
I remember a woman. I don't remember ever getting a settlement.
We don't know for sure. This is just what some people have told us that that there was a settlement involved.
Oh, man. You guys are really testing me. So I remember a patient who's either her husband or boyfriend, I don't know if they were married. Brian made a comment, and it was completely inappropriate. Completely inappropriate. He had said something about, the boyfriend said something about her.
Is this the swinging thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. I understand he had an affair with a woman that was a patient, and that you found out about it, and that there was an intervention that was staged, and pornography was involved.
He's never had an affair. Never. That I am aware of, he has never had an affair. I know for 100% that there's been no affair. But I can tell you that there is definitely pornography, but it has nothing to do with another woman.
You were told that one of the reasons why you left, or the main reason why you left, is because a lot of his patients were from a church you were going to down there.
Yeah.
And that they became aware, the church became aware of the affair, and that there was so much shame involved that you guys kind of wanted to leave to get away from that.
So false. That is unbelievable.
This came from like 5 people.
The affair, the other parts of it,
Yeah.
but there was never an affair, and we never left with a shame. Like I left because so Brian's business down south was a machine. It was big. We had staff. It was really stressful, and it got to where it just was very much. So he made that comment about that woman, and that woman was totally wrong. Brian got into just personally porn.
Wait a second. Did she just blame a victim? Did she just do some victim blaming? Hold on one second.
So Brian's business down south was a machine. It was big. We had staff. It was really stressful, and it got to where it just was very much. So he made that comment about that woman, and that woman was totally wrong. Brian got into just personally porn, and there was a point to where he I believe my husband had a sexual addiction. My husband is very strong, we had a very, very healthy sexual relationship.
Sure.
When I ended up having my 4th child, I pretty much shut down. I had no family in town. Life was hard. He was stressed. I was stressed. It was a really bad time. I found that he had porn. I found that he actually at one point, which I hate to even drag this all up because this is so part of our past. and it was just 2007 to 2018 hit the recession, so we were struggling financially just because
2007, 2008.
2018 or 2008, yes. This is when this all happened. He did end up at one point to where I was pretty positive the only reason we had an intervention is because I was on the phone with my sister and realized that I found out and realized that he had taken some of my mother-in-law's drugs and he had given me some in some tea. And
Wait,
he
what?
drugged me.
Your husband drugged you? Wait, excuse me, let's back up. Again, listen up, guys. Jennifer Drake is telling us that her husband drugged her.
One point where I was pretty positive the only reason we had an intervention is because I was on the phone with my sister and realized that I found out and realized that he had taken some of my mother-in-law's drugs and he had given me some in some tea. And he had drugged me, and
Did he ever admit to that?
yeah,
To drugging you?
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Even when I approached him about it, because I just was blown away. And mind you, it wasn't like he did anything weird. He ended up taking some pictures, and okay, so I'm literally asleep, half topless. But that was this phase that Ryan just went weird on. Like it was about, and I know it was because our sexual life totally went to a halt. Because after my fourth child, I shut down, really. I mean, it didn't shut down, it just, between us, between his work, my children trying to manage it, the last thing I wanted was sex. And so that's where it went to. It went to him porn, he did this, I freaked out. That's why his sister was on the phone with me saying, my mom, she's missing some meds. I put the two together, realized this, immediately his parents and his sister comes in. That was the only intervention. Had nothing to do with cops. It had nothing to do with an affair. Had nothing to do with, what else did you say?
A woman
A woman.
and a settlement?
So there is a woman. There's the only other thing I can think of, and this wasn't at this time, was that he mentioned something about, he said something about, the man was standing there and said something about my girlfriend or my wife. And he goes, yeah, she does have a nice ass. And that, they stopped saying it was, he seriously said that. But there's never been an affair.
We're looking for someone who had motive that was,
I think she's trying to tell you that she possibly could have motive here. How do you not see this? But you want to think that somebody had an intentional gas leak and tried to commit suicide? I mean, what is going on? First of all, yes, there was a settlement because Brian Drake and Jennifer Drake were getting sued from this woman. Her lawyer contacted Brian and said, before we go ahead and file, we're willing to talk to you, about a settlement before we go ahead and just file and go forward with all of this. So Jennifer knew all about this.
thinking like a husband who's been stewing about this for the last 8 years, who maybe has finally divorced his wife and blames Brian for all this and is tracked him down and come up here and shot
I
him.
would totally tell you if he had an affair. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, I am either losing my mind, or these people, which are all, because we have such a huge family, you hear one thing, and then they tell the next person, they all think they, no, I will tell you that my in-laws, so my father-in-law, Jerry, had an affair on his wife. We moved within probably 6 months after that, and ever since she has been very, very pissed because she feels like I took my family and moved them up north to be close to my family, and I pretty much left them destitute because the rest of the family all lives everywhere else in the country.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
So for them to sit there and talk about those things, and that's just family. There's no offense here, because that was like a messed up year, 2008. I just remember thinking, his stress level, we were like, we need to get out of the big city. We need to slow down. Let's get back up to here.
So,
but there was never
the thing with the church,
yeah.
and saying, well, the concern was that they were sort of leaders in their church, and he was putting himself out there to be this great guy when now the church thinks he's not a great guy because of an affair that everybody
No,
thinks
and
he's
I will
involved
be
in.
honestly say, I was in this meeting, and I remember this as clear as day. Our pastor, Matt Carter, was one of his closest friends, and he actually admitted to Matt when we ended up having this, and we brought it out. He came to him and said what he did, and Matt Carter was like, "It is like the same as like raping your wife, even though you didn't do anything. This is like," and so they said, they made him and I sit with the elders, 4 or 5 of them, all very close friends, loved us through this. Brian sat there in front of them and said, "This is what I've done. This is all that, la da da da." And they walked him through it so lovingly, so graciously, and we stayed there for another 4 years. This happened in 2008. We stayed till 2012. This was not something, we did not leave because we were embarrassed of the church.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm just looking for information here, and I
don't,
told this story or a version of this story by like 5 different people.
because they know that this happened, but their timeline was totally wrong. I think they think that we left because he was embarrassed of that, and it wasn't. I mean, yes, he was. It was mortifying, but he grew so much through that.
We've heard all this that you're telling us we've heard.
Okay.
But then the affair and the settlement is a separate issue.
So I need to go back. I mean, I keep records of everything that's paid to everybody, and
one person said that the figure was $20,000.
how would they know that? Do you know how private we are with our stuff? Like the fact that they're telling you this, I'm thinking, where the hell are they getting this information?
It's your family.
I gotta go back and look at stuff now, because I am either worried now that I'm losing my mind and I'm not remembering things. But I would think this would be big enough I would remember.
Clearly, you know your life better than anybody else does.
Clearly, I might not.
Well, we're looking for a motive. We're looking for somebody who would have been angry enough at your husband that he would be willing to do this. And so, if your husband had an affair with somebody's wife, that is prime motivation here. And everybody we talk to says, if I had to guess of what the motive would be, it would be that.
I know that's what everybody's thinking.
Right. So
who's telling you, though, it's an affair? Is it his side of the family or mine? Are you allowed to tell me? Because I'm thinking,
We're trying not to drive a wedge between you guys
we're trying not to cause problems.
and cause problems here.
So
We're
there's-
just trying to know what you know.
there's no wedge. It worries me that they actually think he had an affair. Does that make sense? I really don't, because whatever they think, it's benign because of what they've obviously think they've learned or heard. For me, I'm thinking, which of my family members actually think that Brian had an affair on me? Because when I sit there and go, I know it's not an affair, he's never had an affair on me, they're looking at me thinking I'm lying. Literally, apparently, because I really believe in my heart that there's never been one. They firmly believe that it has been.
It's your family.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they think you're lying. I think that they believe that maybe you're a little bit naive in some of these things, or that Brian was able to fool you in some ways. So we're really probing in the money, sex angle here and see, where did this money go? Was there such a problem? We're not saying that it is.
I know. Okay.
And we're not judging anything. This
No.
isn't about
I know you're not.
I'm just
No.
I don't feel judgment. I don't feel it
We're
even
not doing
doesn't.
that. But
Yeah.
if there was a problem in Texas, here's a thought process.
Yeah.
Okay. If there was a problem in Texas with money or sex and alcohol, pornography, was that cleaned up? Did you guys decide, okay, we're out. We're up here in Idaho, you want to be near your family, away from his family? I don't know why that was, but did he start this again? Okay, that's what we're thinking. And that's the questions we're asking. If it didn't happen, it did not happen.
Yeah.
If it didn't happen in Bonners Ferry, then it did not happen. And what the heck happened in Bonners Ferry?
Yeah.
You see our thought process? We are not trying to drive a wedge between your family.
Oh, I know.
We're not trying to stir up a storm here.
So another thing that has come up is allegations that he was angry and physically abusive towards you and the kids while he was in Texas.
In 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that true?
his dad has a really bad temper, very bad temper, and Brian definitely got part of that. So during this season of 2007, 2008, he was very physical. But again, I say all this to say I'm not going to hide any of that, because 2008, 2009, 2011, we get one of the best counselors ever walk us through so much. He was amazing. And Brian up here was a totally different Brian than Texas. And I know it has to do with how much stress he was under down there. I'm not going to make excuses for him. I mean, I looked at him at one point and said, you ever touch me like that again, I will call the police, and it will be no more. I mean, 2008 was horrible. It was bad. But
Was he physically striking you?
He hit me once. He hit me once very hard.
Did he strike the children?
He didn't strike the children, but there was one time that he got so mad that he grabbed one of the children, and I thought they couldn't breathe. He was trying to get them to stop being loud, and I remember walking in on it, and I remember saying, never touch our children like that again. We will never see them again. But that, was 2008. As soon as that would happen, within an hour, he was, tormented and horrid, and, so that's what I mean by he had his secret wars. I know he learned it from his dad. We went into intense counseling, and over time, the Brian that's up here is nothing like the Brian that was in Texas. I would have never stayed in a marriage like that. He knows I told him. And it was part of the reason why we came up here is because his parents owned 38 dogs. His parents were nowhere to be found anytime ever. So we never had any support down there. And so getting him away from the big city, getting him away from family that really was no help to us, I knew that if things didn't change, I needed to be by my parents, by my family. The kids were going to be next to their cousins. But everything, it sounds so cliche, you guys. I need you to know the Brian up here was nothing like the Brian down there. Never, since we have moved here, never once did he ever strike me. Has he ever hurted the kids? That move was the best thing we ever did for ourselves. And even for the first, I'd say, 10 years of our marriage, he wasn't violent. He wasn't, he'd cross a point where he'd maybe yell, but he was never violent until that year to 2 years, he hit rock of everything just exploded. It was like,
Was he drinking during that time?
I don't think so. We never had alcohol in our house down in Texas. So if he was drinking, right. So if he was drinking, I don't know. He didn't have drinking buddies. His buddies were all the buddies of church.
Let me ask you. The vodka in the water bottles.
Yeah. That really surprised me.
Other people in your family are not surprised and know that he did that and would say that not only would he, anyway, but what I'm saying is, I asked the question, okay, wait a minute. If he's drinking that much, then how do you not smell the alcohol in his breath?
Yeah.
And every time he takes the cap off, how do you not smell the vodka in the air? Yeah. And the response I get is that she doesn't want, meaning you, she doesn't want to acknowledge that problem is going on, so she just kind of papers over it and doesn't want to address that and sort of accepted it. That's the answer we get.
So from you to me, that is absolutely yes. There's nothing in my personality that ever glosses over something like that. If I knew that he had that in there, it would be hell. I would be, for the patient's sake. Like, that is beyond 100 times wrong. That he would actually do that and try to hide it from me is number 2. Like, there is nothing about me wanting to gloss that over.
Him having a problem with alcohol to where he's drinking it like that is not because he's enjoying it. That's a disease.
It's because he needs it.
He's doing it because he physically needs it. So this isn't a failing on his part.
No, but it's not me wanting to gloss over anything. There is no way I would choose to not see that. Like the fact that we have no vodka at our house. I mean, again, We have some Crown Royal that I check every once in a while. It's been there for like 2 years. He hasn't touched it. The only other alcohol that we have in our house ever that I could look anywhere, unless he's hiding it from me, is wine. We drink wine together, and even that is rare.
So there's no question about the alcohol. We know his purchase history from the liquor store up there. We know that they know him. We know what he buys. All his friends know what he buys, and it's what he buys at the liquor store. So there's no
Right.
doubt about it.
So he bought from the liquor store on a regular basis up north?
Yes, absolutely.
What he
No,
had
there's
in the
nothing
car,
I bought, so-
what he had in the car is what he buys.
Right. And his friends know that. They knew
Well, I know
exactly
he
what it
drinks,
was.
but like if we would go on trips, he'd have vodka with friends. He would, like even when we went to, but I never knew he did it on a regular basis.
I keep having to say this. I know that this upsets you, but this is not me addressing a moral failing
I know.
or judging him.
But it helps
I'm
me
trying to
know
figure
what
out.
I'm missing.
I'm trying to figure out the cause of a murder here.
I know.
So how, if at all, how is this associated with that?
And why would he be hiding it from me? Because it does tell me that if he's hiding that from me, and I am literally that naive, could be something else that I am completely naive about.
Well, we don't have any evidence of that thus far. Every time we get a lead, we chase it down, and it doesn't go anywhere. So
Well, please no. I think if there is nothing,
there's
There
nothing.
is
There's
nothing
nothing in
that I am
Texas that
trying
would have
to-
followed him back up here that could have caused this.
no.
No
The
problem
only-
with any person, no settlements, no affairs, no nothing. There's nothing in
Nothing.
Texas that could have caused
And
this.
now that you say settlement, I'm going to go back even into our history and see if I can remember that, because I do all the business stuff. I would think I would remember that. The only thing I ever remember would be people who would prepay. And I remember even her, to where we had to give her money back because she had prepaid and stopped payment.
Was there an issue with his license in Texas where he lost his license for a period of time?
No,
Not aware of that.
no. I know that here he was too late in getting his license, and he ended up having to pay extra in order to get it renewed.
Hearing Jennifer Drake take the stand in the Jennifer Drake versus Dr. Daniel Lee Moore civil suit is going to be off the chains, y'all.
Okay.
But
So this idea that he was at risk of losing his practice in Texas is not a true thing.
no.
So I have the Texas Board of Chiropractor Examiners,
Yeah.
and the explanation, which makes sense to me, is that you guys had left, and they wanted to know why he had not renewed his license.
Right.
And so he wrote him a letter and says, because I moved to Idaho and I'm not renewing it, and they said, okay, you cannot renew your license.
Right.
So that was one of their findings.
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell?
Yes. But do you have anything from chiropractic Texas? That
No.
nothing against. Like,
This
if
is
there was, surely we would. The Texas Chiropractic Board would know it. Like,
Have they asked her one question out of like, where the hell were you on? We have to ask everybody this. Where were you? Huh? Hey, Jennifer, did you have any affairs? Like, Jennifer, what cell phone did you call 911 with? Because we don't have your cell phone as calling 911, even when we do the Cellbrite dump. What phone did you use? Can you think back? Did you use maybe one of your kids' cell phones? How in the world is this not a question on March 26, 2020, when you get the report back and she did not call 911 with her cell phone?
And they would tell the Idaho
right.
Board.
Like if there was
Yes.
something that was against his license.
And they show nothing.
Yeah, that I am aware of.
We're just double checking, and I'm letting you know that we do check.
No, I'm great that you're checking. You
Okay, and
tell
we're
me
not
if
saying
I'm
that
wrong.
we're not saying that you're misleading us. I don't believe that at all.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Jennifer, I kind of believe, I got a little bit of inkling that maybe Brian was misleading you on something.
It's okay.
So that's why I'm
Yeah.
kind of going back and forth here, okay?
None
But
of that bothers
I
me.
wish you would come away from here, I know it's very hard. I wish you would come away from here understanding that we're not trying to drive a wedge in.
I know.
We're trying not to badmouth your husband. We are trying to go in the direction which we keep telling you, which is true.
Yeah.
We're trying to solve this thing, and we're trying to figure out a reason why someone would do this to Brian.
Yeah.
Okay. Murdering somebody is not the way to solve your problems, anything. So why and what occurred that somebody who did this, we're all on.
Yep.
We're not trying to cause your family problems, we're not trying to cause his family problems.
I know.
We don't know the gentleman that came from Mississippi and Tennessee and everything, but they volunteered to come in here and talk to us. They think Brian was the greatest guy. They miss him. But they also told us that as we sit here as well, men have faults.
Yeah.
And some of these faults may be exposed to you, and some of these faults may not be exposed to you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah,
Was there an issue of him taking pictures of clients when they weren't aware of it?
there was one instance, but she never knew about it. I'm the one who actually saw. And it was like the lady was laying down, and she's fully clothed. But he took a picture of her backside, and that's why I was like, why are you taking this picture? It was along with now she never knew, but that was immediate. That's why we decided on these.
Did he have an issue with taking pictures
He did,
that was annoying?
yes, very much so. And again,
How was
though,
that addressed?
with our counseling, like he ended up to where we literally took off the camera off his phone. But even I could tell you, looking through, thousands of, it was all photos of me. It got to be to where it was just like I had triggers. That man was so intense. But again, that was so long ago, and I think he was tormented or something.
Well, and it's weird here because on one hand, you've lost your husband, and we're asking you to tell us all the bad things about him.
I know.
And to expose all the warts.
Yeah.
And every person has warts and has things in their past that they wish they'd done differently. I know I do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my wife would have plenty of things to say if she were in your position. But I have to tell you, your husband, he just an amazing man, amazing friends. Everybody we talked to loved him, far more friends than I have. And so don't let our inquiry make you disappointed in your husband, because by all accounts, there's no reason to be so. I've gone through his photos, for instance, in his phone. My gosh, he takes a lot of pictures of his family, and I mean that seems to be his whole focus in life. So it's not like,
Thank you.
we wanted to look at his browsing history and his phone. He has an app on his phone called Perfect App Lock, which requires code.
Yeah.
Do you know the code?
Yeah.
Can you tell me the code?
I haven't been in a long time, but I think it's SAFE, if I remember right.
It's a numerical code.
Yeah, whatever those. I think
So
it's the
safe.
Perfect app lock.
numerical that goes. I think it's safe. Otherwise, the other one might be 2, 4, 2, 2, 2, 4, 2, 5. So it's one of those two, because it was either SAFE, SAFE, whatever those numbers are, or it was the first name of my kids. And the reason we did that was because after 2008, when we were doing counseling, he even said, he took it even to the pastor and said, lock down my phone. If I can get into it, you're fired. Kind of like, because our pastor would use the same thing, just to keep them to where it was, kept me, triggers. It made me feel safe, knowing that whatever he had on there was clean. I'm not naive enough to think that even though a man has a porn problem, doesn't mean 2 years later he's not going to end up in it again. And so he did whatever he could to try to. Now I know that at some point, even within the last month, I'm like, Brian, I can see that you have Google, and we didn't put it on his business phone. So I'm like, okay, I'm not stupid. Like, are you having problems with this at all? And he's like, no. Now I don't know that he was.
This is a woman who wouldn't let him have the Google app, to search. She monitored what he had on his phone. Do you understand this? Do you understand who we're the type of person that we're dealing with?
They're not. So whatever you find on there, I'm not going to say whether you can or can't find something. I'd like to think that he wasn't struggling, but
Well, obviously, we'd like to find something like a Tinder app, where he has an account or something.
right,
That would be great.
that would be great.
So-
And the other thing to look for, which I don't know that you can know, but I'm telling you, like 2007, 2008, the other thing that I found was that he had learned how to, let's say you've got a page that is empty, and they taught, I remember him looking it up, this was in 2008 when we were so forward, and you had a way to be able to do this, and all of a sudden an app would show up, like it's hiding. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So
So he'd hit all four corners of the
like,
screen
or he'd hit a certain spot,
on the
and
screen.
it's where it would come up. Now this was back when he had a whole different phone, and all these were just coming out on the market, and you could buy a book
He
that shows
has-
you all the
He
apps.
has an app on his phone called Black Screen.
Okay,
Is that a thing?
I don't know. So I'm
And
really.
he does have on his main menu, he has 4 pages. The first page is blank, the second page is full, the third page is half full, and the fourth page is blank.
So that's what that would be the next thing I would look at, because, and again, I haven't seen anything in 8 to 10 years, even when I would sit there. So we always had this ever since we moved, or even before that, when we started counseling. There's be no passcodes. At any time that I want to look at the phone, he just hands it over immediately. And since that time, of those 2 years, we've never gone backwards. To where I've never found something. He's been completely clean. We've kept the app on there so we can make our sons do it. So I've never found anything. It just does not mean he's much more savvy than I am. I don't have the time to even figure out if there's something hiding. But I would, on a regular basis, scan through just to look at it, and he would always hand it over in time.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that something's not hiding on one of those 2 pages that I just don't know how to see.
But it also means that he may not be doing anything wrong at all.
Right. It's true. I wish that's not an easy answer for you. I get it.
He may not have slid back at all.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
kind of a track.
These are the detectives in the Idaho 4 case. This is what got me to even find this case, was Gary Tolson being listed as a person that was being sued in a lawsuit. This is how I found this case, Gary Tolson. If this is what transpired in the Idaho 4 case in terms of your interviews, which I know it did, this is what they do. Shit, one of their ex-troopers, ISP guy, murdered his wife, tried to make it look like a suicide. Who do these people think that they are?
Yeah. Sure.
Ask her where she was.
What else, Gary?
I think that's it for now. She's been sitting here for a long time. Been beating up on her here a little bit.
Well, so there's really nothing new to tell me.
I wish we have some other, we're tracking down. There's a homeless person that was evicted the night or 2 before that we're still trying to get our hands on to talk to him. There's another guy up there who, one of his patients knows this guy and wondered if he might have been a patient of Brian's. We haven't found that to be true yet. And this guy apparently is an angry, violent guy who threatened the family with a gun recently. So we're looking at him. We're still waiting for the next big thing that will happen is we'll get all the search warrant returns. So we'll get a big dump from the tower, the cell phone tower that covered the area, as well as Google and that sort of thing, showing us all the Android phones that were there and all the phones that hit the tower and how their distance and where they were. And then we can start going through that haystack. But we're looking for a needle in a haystack at that point.
So you've been through all the files, though? Like of the people?
We haven't contacted all of his patients, no, by any means. But we have probably interviewed maybe 25 of them, of his most recent patients.
The ones that maybe he sees every Thursday? Or
Yeah, all those. Yeah.
Okay. No idea of when I'll get the phones or files back.
Potentially, we could scan all that and I could give them back to you.
The files.
Or I could, the files. As far as the device, I'm not going to give the device up until after I've had a chance to, so when we use a company called Cellbrite, and they have a technology that you can plug a device into that, and they basically suck everything off of it and then present it to me in a format that I can make sense of and review.
Right.
It doesn't do things that are off the cloud. So like anything that's cloud-based, I've got to go get a separate warrant for that to make them give me whatever that is. So there's a few things he's got on his phone that are cloud-based. So I've got to go, get a warrant for those things, or if you let me look at them, like Dropbox and his Google Drive. He had something called Chomp SMS, which is a messaging service. He used WhatsApp. There's something called Tabs.
Tabs is a guitar, so that's guitar tabs just for music.
And then Duo, some sort of a video communication.
Yeah, Duo is a video to video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Access.
Access, I think, is another music, if I remember right.
Okay.
I think it's a music app.
And then Bixby Routines.
Yeah, Bixby. Gosh, I remember that. I don't remember what that is. But I remember it on his thing. And WhatsApp, does it show that he's used WhatsApp?
I can see one conversation with a guy named Don Lynn.
Oh, Don Lynn. Oh, that makes sense. He's in Nicaragua. Yeah, he's a missionary. So that would make sense because that's far away. Yep. But other than that, yeah, Messenger, of course, Marco.
Are you getting any, because we're not looking, are you looking at on your Facebook, are you getting any, obviously people are wanting to say things, but is anything strange come up on Facebook or anything strange?
I will be honest, because his family is so large and mine is so large, I am ready for them to leave and I'm very overwhelmed. I've hardly looked at Facebook.
I'm not asking you to do that,
I know.
just if you did, is there something strange posted?
I'm asking you to.
Yeah, I actually did see one right after I saw you last that was really weird, and I need to go back and find it because they're all over, like between the Bonners Ferry, with the media thing, there's like 175 posts underneath there. And then there's, of course, Facebook, there's Messenger, there's all these weird ones. And there was a name I've never heard of, and he said something like, the words were, "This is right."
That was the GoFundMe page from James.
Yeah.
But James donated money and then wrote, "This is right." So we were thinking that could
Oh,
mean
did
a lot
he
of
donate?
things.
Oh, $25, you're right.
So we're thinking, maybe
No,
it's
that's
like,
what it is. I'm like, maybe he's just saying.
well, this is right to donate money.
Right.
Yeah, maybe
Not
so.
that it's right that this happened.
Yeah, okay. That was the only one. And then there was another one that was really weird when I had something to do with his broken leg, but I don't think it was. But I haven't seen most of my sisters, they'll tell me ones that I need to sit down and just be able to read and things.
So, we're not asking you to do investigation stuff, but if something comes up,
Yeah.
this is, I don't know what this means, send it to us or let us know. The other thing is if Eldora or Kiko, is it not?
Kiko.
They get a hold of you.
His name's actually Caleb.
Yeah, it's actually.
Caleb?
Caleb's his real first name. Keikoa is his middle name.
Oh, I had to ask her like 5 times, just spell it for me. Caleb would have been helpful.
So, what I'm interested in is if you find out her husband's name,
Yeah.
if they're still together.
And you
Well,
don't
we're going to bring her back in.
We are, but I just
But you
want
don't
to
see
know
it on
what.
the files
So,
that he ever saw?
I'm not the person that's been going
so
through
no.
the files. There's another detective that's his job.
I
So.
see.
but I would just
Yeah.
be curious of what she tells you and what she tells us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And her niece.
Yeah.
The niece.
Okay.
Just, as we're bouncing this off you, we're bouncing it off other people. We come back with you, what people have said,
Yeah.
we're bouncing it off kind of thing.
Yes. Okay. For sure. And the person who saw that you couldn't pick anybody up out of the lineup, the guy you actually saw.
No.
And that would be completely opposite of what Marty Ryan and this dude right here, Van Leuven, say the complete opposite to Dan Moore, and they say that the eyewitness saw you. An eyewitness, Isaac Funderburg, didn't see Dan Moore, Marty, and Mike Van Leuven, and you knew it, and you're sick.
So, why do you think that this person would have picked the alleyway right next to a highway rather than going around the corner and just shooting him where nobody could have seen him?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, he literally shot him in the back.
Through a window through a blind.
Yes, like the biggest coward, but yet where people could see him, instead of around that corner, it's all hidden. Like, nobody would have seen him.
Right. The nature of this has not escaped us. We've definitely been thinking about all of these things and different reasons why that might look that way, which is why I was very interested when this affair thing rose to the surface, that the 16-year-old had blamed mom and Dr. Drake for the divorce, and then it finally at 16 had decided to do something about it.
Yeah.
So, because that's the kind of thing a 16-year-old would do.
Right.
Is like shoot a single round into a window trying to get back at somebody.
So true.
But
And Jennifer Drake has a 16-year-old when you're interviewing her right now. That's something a 16-year-old would do. Listen to that, guys. If you're going to say that 16-year-old could have done it, that means any 16-year-old could have done it.
this affair thing rose to the surface, that the 16-year-old had blamed mom and Dr. Drake for the divorce, and then it finally at 16 had decided to do something about it.
Yeah.
So, because that's the kind of thing a 16-year-old would do,
Right.
is like shoot a single round into a window trying to get back at somebody.
So true.
But
But no.
he appears to have an alibi. It's in time with a phone
Do
call.
you think there's any chance this could be a hitman?
Well, let me say this. Mr. Hartman, his office may have some enemies because of the people he's defrauded.
Yeah.
And people may not have been aware that Brian even had an office in that building. They just thought it was all one big office of Hartman's, and may have been a family member or something, or someone who had lost money and was been stewing about this, and saw the opportunity to shoot through a window.
So you're following that way?
We are. We're turning that direction.
We have now twice a week, we're having detective meetings where we sit, and we have other detectives come in. They throw these questions out, and we're working on different theories of why this would occur.
Yeah.
None of this is stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're in our third ring of people, family, friends. We're out in our third ring here.
Yeah.
And the next thing I think that's going to happen, and Craig may, I assume Craig is going to talk to you about this, but he's going to put up some billboards asking for information with maybe a picture of Brian and a reward.
Yeah.
And see
You
if we
mentioned
can,
it to me.
because that, at this point, that may be effective. We don't do that. That's up to the family and him and however.
The police never did one press conference ever in this case. The police never did any press updates, nothing like that. The police never had a true press conference after the arrest of Daniel Lee Moore. The police never updated the community. The police never took questions from the media. This whole entire investigation was under the radar. That community knew nothing. That community didn't even really know who was shot and killed for days. Nothing. That community didn't even know that Dr. Drake was shot through an alleged window. They didn't even know where the crime scene was. There was no information that was given to the public. None.
If you guys want to do that, you can. We don't direct people to put up rewards, but certainly I'm not opposed to that at this point. And we'll provide the state crime hotline that you can put on the board if you want to.
So who does he reach to that? Because he did mention the day before he flew out. He said within about 2 weeks he might go ahead with that.
That would be good timing.
Yeah.
Because we don't want it too soon. We may come up with something, but
So should he just reach you?
Yeah, he's got my number. He's working. He's gonna burn it by me.
Okay.
We kind of thought it would be good to have a picture of Brian on the billboard.
Okay.
I didn't think you'd want your family picture on the billboard. Just
Yeah.
Brian.
Absolutely.
So
Do you have a picture that you want to put on the billboard?
Sure, we can use the one that we used for his, it's the best representation of him. It's just a headshot.
Okay.
I like the one in the black shirt that shows his torso because that kind of shows him a little
And
better.
goatee a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of humanizes him a little bit more than just a headshot.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
That's fine. It's
um,
on our Facebook page, I think, but something about it. Okay,
I wish I had good news for you. I hope the day comes when I will be able to call you with good news.
me too.
And we will follow all of this and we'll do everything we can. And like I said in the beginning, I can't promise results. I can only promise effort. And
So at what point did they call you off? How long do you have to?
they don't call us off. We go until we go until there's nothing else to do, and then the case stays open forever and ever and ever in case somebody brings something else up.
Okay.
So we don't ever close a case on homicide. It will stay open forever and ever until we get a result.
Okay.
So
Okay. Somebody
And the same amount of people we threw at it when we started are still working on it. It hasn't dwindled. The captain comes in, asks us, not daily, but almost daily, where we're at with it, what are we doing, what do we need?
yeah, and that gets all briefed down to the director of the state police, to the governor's office. I mean, everybody's aware of what we're doing up there and what happens.
Because this coronavirus, if we've been told is that if they need us to do patrol stuff, we're not gonna be doing patrol stuff, we stay on the homicide. The drug detectives will go in.
Brian Drake was beginning his Thursday like any other Thursday in March of 2020. To be exact, March 12th of 2020. Brian lived with his wife and 4 children in Hayden, Idaho. Brian Drake on Mondays and Thursday mornings would drive out from Hayden to Bonners Ferry to see patients on Mondays and Thursdays. Brian Drake would spend the night in Bonners Ferry on Monday nights and Thursday nights, and then return the following morning. But that would not happen on March 13th, 2020, Friday morning. Brian Drake would not be returning home to Hayden to be with his family. Because Brian Drake, on Thursday night, he would be taking a phone call with his wife after seeing patients around 7:15. And at the conclusion of that phone call, Brian Drake screamed out that he had been hit, that he had been shot through the window of his office in Bonners Ferry. His wife on the other line, the other side of that line, in a frantic state, screamed back out to him with no replies. She then quickly hung up the phone and called 911. Brian Drake's wife, Jennifer Drake, would never talk to her husband again. Bonners Ferry is a small community, and therefore Bonners Ferry Police Department immediately within hours brought in the Idaho State Police to help with this investigation, and in fact lead it and take it over. Idaho State Police would make over 200 interviews, interviewing people that were patients and colleagues of Dr. Drake, family, friends. This investigation would begin on March 12th, 2020 in the evening and go until August 27th, 2020, when an arrest would finally be made, about 6 months later. The investigation was kept under wraps for the better part of 6 months. The community, no answers, very little updates, no press conference. It was like it was an investigation that was riding under the radar. That is until August 27th, 2020, when Dr. Dan Moore would be called in to the Bonners Ferry Police Department to speak with Idaho State Police detectives Gary Tolson and Mike Van Leuven one last time, where they told Dr. Moore that they knew he killed Brian Drake, said it was because Brian Drake had stole patients, and that they could prove this with surveillance cameras, 18 to be exact, around the business of Brian Drake. The only problem with arresting Dr. Daniel Lee Moore was that they did so after obtaining a false confession where Dr. Daniel Lee Moore had requested at least 8 times for a lawyer before finally saying, okay, sure, yeah, I did it. Nothing about this case has settled well with TNT, and so that is why, beginning in the spring and summer of 2023, Truth and Transparency took it upon themselves to investigate who really killed Brian Drake. My name is Lana Oriani, and I will take you guys through chapter by chapter the investigation into who killed Brian Drake, the arrest of Dr. Daniel Lee Moore, and where everything stands today, heading into a civil suit between Jennifer Drake, the widow of Brian Drake, and Dr. Daniel Lee Moore that is set for July of 2024 for a wrongful death suit, of which Dr. Daniel Lee Moore countersued, as well as suing members of the Idaho State Police and Bonners Ferry Police Department. You guys decide. Did Dr. Daniel Lee Moore get off on a Miranda technicality? Or is Dr. Daniel Lee Moore 100% innocent and those responsible are still out there in the murder of chiropractor Brian Drake? All information coming from this podcast are from actual police interviews, reports, exhibits, and then additional information by TNT throughout a real-time investigation into who really killed Brian Drake. If you are in the area of Hayden, Idaho, or Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and have additional information that could be helpful, please do not hesitate to email myself at themindchallenge@gmail.com. All podcast episodes can be found on my YouTube channel, Truth and Transparency, under the playlist Who Really Killed Brian Drake Podcast. I'll be seeing all of you guys this evening, where I break down what I truly think about Jennifer Drake's interviews with the police and what happened after that interview. Join me. Love you guys. Love the mods. Be safe until tonight. Again, you guys make the decisions. I'll just keep bringing the facts.